Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Doomsday. I have a super survival system. Chapter 41. 15 minutes later, Mary appeared in front of Enkai. How are you? Mary asked blankly. A blank expression is already her standard expression. Enkai has only seen her expression change twice since she met her. But she is caring about herself, which Enkai can still confirm. Fortunately, I can't die. Enkai forcefully stabilizes his own emotions. Adrenaline is a magical medicine in some cases, but its sequelae are also serious. The most common adverse reactions are headache, irritability, insomnia, pale complexion, weakness, elevated blood pressure, tremor, etc. If the dose is relatively large, it can also cause abdominal pain and arrhythmia. He feels a little irritable now, and his body also has an indescribable sense of weakness. It seems that every movement of his fingers will consume all his energy. Fortunately, he uses a systemic injection of medicine. There is a mechanism here, that is, all the searched things can get a certain degree of attribute ascension or reduce side effects when used through the system. Of course, this behavior itself also has side effects. The advantage is that if you use a tool, you can ascension the effect of the tool. For example, if you use an axe to cut wood, a tree with a thick bowl can be cut with only 3 strokes. On the contrary, if Enkai directly carries the axe to cut it, the tree with the thick mouth is long enough for him to cut down. The system saves him a lot of energy and time. And he can also attach various plugins to the axe. At present, Enkai can manufacture plugins such as weight gain, sharpness, flame, rust, etc. The first 2 are suitable for work, and the latter 2 are suitable for combat. For example, adrenaline, if injected through the system, not only can ascension the effect of the drug, but also reduce the side effects of the drug. In fact, adrenaline is said to be very God, but it is not really God to an incredible degree. It is nothing more than stimulating the body's potential, so that the tired people will not be tired in a short time, and the dying people will live a little more, possible. But this is tantamount to eating inferior grains, which is an overdraft behavior. In reality, healthy people should never take adrenaline casually. This thing is very harmful to the body if it is not used well. It is the kind that can't make up for how many big wastes are eaten. The system can help him avoid most of the side effects, and the feedback on him is at most headaches, nausea and fatigue. This is worthy of God evaluation. But there are advantages and disadvantages. First of all, if you use various tools and weapons through the system, the durability of these things will drop and fly. A normal axe used to chop wood may chop tens of thousands of times before it needs to be overhauled, but if it is used through the system, durability will fall to the bottom after 200 times. If it is not repaired in time, it may be completely damaged at any time. Disappeared, so did the firearms. Firearms through the system will weaken the recoil by more than half, making it easier to control. The disadvantage is that they are particularly prone to damage and must be repaired if they do not fire many guns. In terms of drugs, the downside is that it costs special drugs. Under normal circumstances, a drug like adrenaline is enough to inject a little bit, but how much has Enkai injected just now? What he took out was not the small-sized needle, but the medium-sized needle that was thicker than a finger. Under normal circumstances, if this needle went down, he was afraid that he would not be far from death. However, this is the standard of the system, and he can't change it at will. If you want to use it, you need to combine multiple adrenal glands regulated by reality into one. Fortunately, he hasn't been short of medicines lately, and he has found a lot of adrenaline in perfect packaging, otherwise it would be difficult for him to get one out. After all, this thing requires a higher level of pharmacist, and he is not qualified enough. In this regard, tablets of the drug are actually the most cost-effective, and a single drug can be systematically identified. In short, Enkai looks miserable, but in fact there is nothing wrong. He just needs to rest for a while. What's the situation in the shelter? Enkai took a breath and asked. Before he collapsed, he could still see the blazing fire in the sanctuary. He didn't know what kind of fuel the wild dogs used to make the Molotov cocktail for these guys. It should be gasoline, otherwise, how could it be so resistant to burning? The fire has been extinguished, Mary replied. Enkai smiled. It seems that the time for us to find the fire extinguisher is quite right, otherwise this time the loss will be great. Once the shelter is established, if you can't abandon it, it's better not to abandon it. After all, there is a lot of Ankai's hard work in it. Although it can be rebuilt if it is abandoned, it is a waste of time after all. The fire only burned in the yard. The outer wall of the workshop was slightly burned, but it was not a big problem. The inside was not burned at all, and our loss was very small. Mary said. Yes, and Kai nodded. The wild dog gang is miserable this time, I hope they can get through the crisis. And Kai grinned. He said it so nicely, but in his heart he wished that the wild dog would help him die. He has always been able to poison milk, and he sincerely hopes that he can succeed in poisoning milk this time. Right, where's the corpse? Still in the same place. I am a little worried about you, so I'll go over here first. Go and fix the corpse, so as not to attract the zombies. I will rest for a while and it will be fine. And Kai's worry is not unreasonable. Zombies will actively attack the living creatures they find, and at the same time they are keen to transform more companions. If a corpse that has never been infected appears in front of the zombies, then any zombies can't help sending the virus in their bodies, and then create more zombies out. Therefore, fresh dead corpses must be disposed of, either by burning them or mincing them. In short, just don't leave them to zombies. Okay, I'm going now. After confirming that Ankai is really fine, Mary turned and left. After she left, Ankai withdrew her gaze and turned to look far away, not knowing what she was thinking. The riverside area returned to calm. The lizard gang finally defended the own base camp. The price paid is also very high. The original size of about 20 people is now said to have only about 10 people left. The method for them to escape is also very simple. They sent out a few older members, under the cover of others, rushed out of the zombie group, detonated bombs in different places, attracted the zombies, and finally disarmed the lizard. The crisis of helping. Of course, these people have also been killed by zombies. In that case, leaving the shelter is dead. The wild dog gang suffered heavy casualties in the Ankai Marie Sanctuary, and their original plan to expedition to the water plant has also stopped. They are now shrinking in the eastern district, silently licking their wounds, waiting for the moment when their fangs are exposed again. Ankai and Mary also gained fame among the survivors because of this battle. With the strength of 2 people, 8 members of the wild dog gang were killed. Not only did they defend the own shelter, they also severely severed a dog's paw from the wild dog gang. This is not something ordinary people can do. Among the survivors, gangs such as the wild dog gang are synonymous with well-equipped. They have enough food and drinking water, cars and armors, pistols and crossbows. In the case of general survivors using knives, they can indeed be crushed. But Ankai and their equipment is undoubtedly more sophisticated, especially the appearance of 2 rifles, which really shocked Xiao Xiao's existence. Many people who had originally planned to fight for the sanctuary also died down and did not dare to appear again. 2 days later, Ankai was fully recovered and armed himself again. This time he did not act alone, but took Mary with him and drove out of the shelter. Soon, the car stopped in front of Old Barry's door. Ankai jumped out of the car, walked forward with a gun, and kicked the door open. Old Barry was sitting on the sofa, looking at him with a smile. Ankai stepped forward, his muzzle hitting Barry's forehead directly. Give me an explanation for not killing you. The smile on Old Barry's face remained unchanged. I said all this has nothing to do with me, do you believe it? What do you say? Ankai said with a sneer. He actually didn't want to believe that Old Barry would betray him. Although there is no close relationship between him and Old Barry, there is no interest entanglement, but they also have no hatred. But he couldn't think of other possibilities. Seeing Ankai's sneer, Old Barry sighed. I'm old. My son and daughter-in-law died in the Federal War. They only left me with a grandson. You know what's going on outside now. There is a shortage of food, and now there is a shortage of drinking water. To be honest, we can't go on anymore. Don't you like to use intelligence to trade materials with others? But I also need to pay if I want to get information. So this is why you betrayed me. The wild dogs have given too much help. Boom. Ankai retracted the pistol, turned around blankly and left. Mary came out from inside and shook her head at him. The last time Ankai came, the little guy who made him tea was Barry's grandson. Sure enough, the old thing knew the end of Own, so he sent his grandson away in advance. In fact, even if Enkai did not come to him, he would not survive. The other survivors could not tolerate him to continue living. The only question now is, where did this old thing send his grandson? Most likely it is not the Wild Dog Gang, because he knows that he and the Wild Dog Gang have already made an feud. He will never let his only grandson fall into any possible crisis. So he will definitely send his grandson to a place that Enkai can't find. This size is also a hidden danger. Enkai gritted his teeth, but it is almost impossible for him to find that little guy now, and he can't even cut the grass and roots. Fortunately for you, he gritted his teeth and drove away with Mary. For this hidden danger, we can only be more careful in the future. But what he didn't know was that when he shot and killed Old Barry, the young man he regarded as a hidden danger was lying silently in a thicket of weeds. There were vultures hovering in the sky, and scavengers on the ground began to approach this side. This is reality and humanity. The young man, regarded as everything by Barry, did not live as well as he expected. The cut in his throat is enough to explain everything. Back at the shelter, Enkai asked Mary to go to the chemistry station to continue her medicine. Although there are already a lot of medicines, the battle with the Wild Dog Gang still gave Enkai a strong sense of urgency. He really underestimated the moral bottom line of people in the last days. In fact, thinking about it, in order to survive, the bottom line of people can be very low. Enkai had been acting alone before, and there were not many chances of encountering survivors, nor had he seen too many human tragedies and intrigues. Although I have seen a lot in various literary and film works, to be honest, it is an experience to have heard it, and to feel it in person is another experience. Enkai's previous development cannot be said to be unpleasant, but he was not really eager to desperate, but this time the betrayal of Barry and the raid by the Wild Dog Gang made him realize that his own development was not enough. Take a look at the outer wall of the shelter. The reinforcement measures were almost burned out, and the courtyard floor was burned to a large area of scorched black. And this is only the damage caused by some members of the Wild Dog Gang. What if the Wild Dog Gang is all about it? After the Wild Dog Gang eliminated the Hungry Wolf Gang, the number had reached about 60 people. The death of 8 people is indeed a big loss, but before the battle with the Hungry Wolf Gang, their scale has expanded a lot. And recruiting people in the Doomsday is simply not too simple. As long as you provide enough rations, even if you are cannon fodder, some people are willing to join the Wild Dog Gang. They can fully expand their staff to more than 100 people in a short time, and even 200 people are not a problem. The Wild Dog Gang's food reserves are definitely sufficient. What's more, in the riverbank area, the biggest threat to Enkai's shelter has never been the Wild Dog Gang or the zombies. After all, the number of the Wild Dog Gang is limited, and the location of the headquarters is too clear. If something really happens that causes Enkai to retaliate directly against the Wild Dog Gang, don't worry about not being able to find them. The words of zombies are too stupid. As long as the heat weapons are enough, it is not difficult to clean them with the help of favorable terrain. What really made him beware was the survivors in the Central District and the North District. Even though they are fighting on their own right now, their numbers are too much, or even more than 1,000 people. Moreover, all of them are below the food and clothing line, and the demand for various materials is very large. These people are usually not aggressive, but once greed overcomes reason, no one can guarantee that these people will not unite to attack Enkai's shelter. After all, there are still too few people in the shelter. If Enkai now has 50 subordinates, no, not so many, even if he has only 10 subordinates, the result will be completely different. But recruiting is not done overnight. Although there is a member system to check loyalty, it must be after recruiting. Enkai cannot know whether someone is loyal or not before recruiting. If you find that you are not loyal and kick it after the recruitment, it will more or less affect the atmosphere of the shelter. When the number of personnel is relatively small, this kind of thing is still done less frequently. Therefore, what Enkai can do is to continue to upgrade and strengthen the shelter. After all, the Wild Dog Gang and other survivors have limited means. They can get firearms at most. With the addition of some grenades, heavy weapons will not be affected. The northern part of the old city was formerly a battlefield for the army and zombies. It stands to reason that there should be a lot of abandoned large weapons. Enkai has also inquired, and the information obtained is not satisfactory. There are indeed a lot of large weapons left there, but there are also many zombies there, gathered in groups over there, and they will not disperse in a short time. But even so, there are bold people who are willing to take risks and try to find weapons that can be used. As a result, many people ventured to investigate, but found that most of the weapons over there were no longer usable. Most of the weapons were overused, which caused the barrel to be overheated, deformed, softened, and exploded. These unlikely conditions on weekdays appeared on the battlefield in the north of the city. It can be seen that the purpose of destroying the zombies in the city, what price the human army has paid, have gone through such crazy battles. In the end, the human army failed, so zombies should not be underestimated, especially when the number reached a certain level. All in all, there are almost no heavy weapons among the survivors, and Ankai need not worry that the shelter will be shelled. So the part he needs to strengthen most now is the fire protection function. The strength of the wall is sufficient for the time being, but simple wood is not enough for fire prevention. Iron bars are fine, but Ankai can never completely cover all walls with iron bars, and the system does not support him to do so. What he can do now is very simple, is to use concrete reinforcement. Concrete needs cement, stones, and steel bars. The latter two are easy to solve. For cement, it needs to be specially manufactured, and sand and lime are needed. Lime can be used to burn stones in a furnace, but sand is more troublesome, so I can only find it out of the city. Fortunately, there are some sand and cement in the shelter. They were all found in some construction sites when Ankai was searching for materials. The quantity is not large, but it is enough in a short time. I'll talk about the things in the future, and now let's do the things at hand first. Ankai began to strengthen the shelter with all his strength. On the one hand, it could enhance the defense of the shelter, and on the other hand, it was also for the purpose of leveling. He is now focused on Engineer Level 4, and the reason is very simple. Engineer Level 4 means that the shelter has truly entered the electrical age. At that time, he can build his own generators, electrical transformers, and wires. With these, he can manufacture machine tools. In fact, machine tools can only be manufactured by engineers at Level 4. With machine tools, he can make firearms, including light machine guns. With a machine gun, Ankai can largely ignore those enemies who can still pose a threat to him. Including machine gun bullets, these can be achieved only by Level 4 engineers or machine tools. So upgrading is his most important thing at the moment. In this way, Ankai was immersed in the work of strengthening the shelter, and a week passed without knowing it. The Wild Dog Gang was very quiet during this period, and the entire river bank area became a lot quieter. It seemed that the previous series of conflicts had never been unexpected. On this day, as Ankai continued to strengthen the defense of the shelter, a familiar voice rang out from the door of the shelter. Curry. Ankai was a little surprised, and immediately ran out of the workshop, climbed up the wall, and glanced outside. After confirming that it was Curry himself, he hurried over and opened the door of the factory. "Brother, you finally came back." Ankai went up and gave Curry a big hug. He really has been looking forward to Curry's return for a long time. If the shelter is short of people, so it needs to supplement manpower, then Ankai first thought of Curry. Curry's return is really great news for him. Ankai is short of people now. In fact, everything else is easy to say. The only problem with the shelter is the most difficult to solve. He has always adhered to the principle of not overdoing it. The membership system is not omnipotent, and other people's mental states must be taken into consideration, so it is impossible for him to recruit people casually, and then check the loyalty through the membership system to decide whether to leave or stay. Not to mention the time and effort, the biggest problem is that it may leave hidden dangers to the shelter. Therefore, Ankai hopes that he can directly find someone he is satisfied with and trustworthy. Unless there are more people in the shelter and a certain membership base, he may relax this requirement. But there are too few people he can trust. Mary is one and Curry is one. Although the Simpsons are good, they still have too little contact with him. He still can't fully trust the Simpsons, not to mention the fact that they have their own shelters and have a good life, so they may not be willing to join. So he has very few choices, and it can almost be said that Curry is the only one at the moment. So Ankai is very excited about Curry's arrival. "Man, lightly, your strength is too great." Curry patted Ankai on the back. In fact, his statement is too exaggerated, and Ankai, who has almost no combat skills, can be thrown out of 10 streets by Curry. After Enkai brought Curry into the shelter, Curry was surprised by the sight of the shelter. "Is this your shelter? Are you sure there are only 2 of you here?" Curry was not too surprised by how Mary looked now. In fact, anyone with a brain can guess the reason behind this when they see what Mary looked like before. If it is really ugly to be unsightly, then there is no need for any disguise. In today's Doomsday era, it is precisely the beautiful women who need to be disguised. The theme building of the shelter is the #1 workshop of the pharmaceutical factory. When you enter the door, the first thing you see is the huge machine tool. Don't get me wrong, it is not the machine tool manufactured by Enkai, but the original one in the workshop. There were originally 4 large-scale workshops in the workshop, or assembly lines, but the difference is not bad anyway. This thing originally had 4 large ones and 8 small ones, which filled the entire workshop. But after Enkai came, out of the need for materials, half of them were removed, that is, the 2 big and 4 small. But even so, there are 2 large, 4 small and 6 production lines left in the workshop, which still occupies most of the space of the workshop. Next to these large machines are various equipment made by Enkai. For example, he released 5 furnaces in one go. As long as he himself is in the shelter, these furnaces will smelt various metals 24 hours a day, preparing for the next mass production of bullets. I thought that 600 bullets would be enough for the time being, but Enkai found that he was still too naive, and 6,000 bullets were about the same. He got 10 water traps in one breath and arranged them in a row by the wall. These water traps looked rough, but they could introduce water vapor in the air through a funnel-shaped structure into the water droplets below. In the bucket, these waters are theoretically clean water, but Enkai has never dared to relax his vigilance in this regard. He has specially made 3 water purifiers to ensure that the water he drinks is clean and pollution-free. There are also a large number of other equipment, which can provide Enkai with all kinds of help and comprehensively strengthen the integrity of the shelter. Of course there are only 2 of us. These things were made by the 2 of us. Enkai didn't plan to tell Curry that these things were made by himself. He was afraid of frightening Curry, and he was going to take his time. However, Mary is not giving face. "I just joined. I didn't do anything other than pharmaceuticals and search." Enkai was speechless. Curry stared at him with wide eyes. "Well, I actually made it. Let's not talk about it. You are tired, come, take a shower, let's eat first." It's noon now, and Kai and the others have been busy all morning and haven't eaten yet. At this time when water and electricity have been cut off, bathing is undoubtedly a very luxurious thing, but Enkai does not matter, he has a water collector, and this water is not a problem. When Curry took a shower, the 3 of them sat at the dining table and looked at the abundant food on the table. Curry almost didn't hold himself to death. "Your life here is too good, I don't want to go anymore." "Then don't go." Enkai kept up with the words the first time. "Curry, in fact, even if you don't come, I am planning to look for you recently. In fact, the riverside area is very unstable now, and a lot of things have happened." Enkai briefly and concisely talked about what happened recently, including him and Mary exploring the south, the betrayal of the Old Berry, the result of the fighting between the Wild Dog Gang and the Hungry Wolf Gang, and the invasion of the Wild Dog Gang. Unexpectedly, Old Berry actually. Curry couldn't help feeling a little sigh when he learned that Old Berry was shot to death by Enkai. Among these lone wolf survivors, the Old Berry has a high reputation and prestige. Although he will receive some compensation when others ask for help, this is reasonable. In this environment, sometimes a piece of useful information can save many lives. He betrayed Enkai. In fact, from the perspective of Old Berry, he can't be said to be wrong. In order to survive, he has no other choice. He still has a grandson to support. He is also old and may pass away at any time. His grandson is too young to support himself, so Berry must find a good one for his grandson. Road to survival. The best way is naturally to join a certain force. But gangs are impossible. The environment inside the gang is definitely not what Berry wants to see. So he can only entrust some more powerful survivors who he can trust. In fact, what Enkai didn't know was that he was once one of Berry's candidates. As long as he had enough supplies, he could use these supplies as a price to let Enkai take in his grandson. It is a pity that the Wild Dog Gang gave Lao Bari a large amount of supplies before Ankai, allowing Lao Bari to save enough for the powerful survivors to shelter his grandson. The price is to sell Ankai's information to the Wild Dog Gang and provide Ankai with some wrong information. For example, the primary goal of the Wild Dog Gang is Jack, who doesn't know if he exists. There is both the beauty of human nature and the ugliness of human nature. Therefore, from the perspective of Old Barry, his choice is not wrong. He and Ankai are just an ordinary transactional relationship, and there is no closer relationship. It's just that Ankai defeated the Wild Dog Gang in the end, so the only one waiting for Barry was death. Ankai does not regret killing Barry. Even if he loses an intelligence source, he will never let him go. Curry, buddy, I need your help. Ankai looked at Curry very seriously. Curry also looked at him, then shook his head with a wry smile. To be honest, I want to help you too, but it's a pity that I can't help you for the time being. Why? Ankai asked subconsciously. I'm going to Lyle, my uncle is almost running out. Curry's local family members have all passed away, but in Lyle, 500 kilometers away, he still has an uncle alive. The reason I didn't go before was just because the road was not peaceful. Although there are no zombies in the wild, there are beasts that have been upgraded after being infected with the zombie virus, and the danger is no less than that of zombies. In this case, the risk of leaving the city may be even greater. But just 2 days ago, a group of survivors who migrated from Lyle here brought Curry news of his uncle. Curry's uncle was stabbed when he was in a conflict with others. Although he killed the other party in the end, his uncle is not good enough. It is estimated that he will not last long. Because of this, Curry's uncle took out all his savings and asked someone to bring a message here, hoping to take a look at his own family one last time before leaving. Although all of his relatives may have passed away, Curry's uncle himself has been alive for a few days, and he no longer needs those supplies. As a result, after the group came here, after repeated inquiries, they really found Curry and handed him the letter left by Curry's uncle. The wild is dangerous, you know it. Ankai wanted to persuade Curry not to go, but he didn't seem to have this position. I know, but I have to go. I only have this one of my relatives, so I'm sorry, I can't join the shelter for the time being. Curry said with a look of guilt. What else can Ankai say? He can only add some supplies to Curry, and then send him on the road. I worked overtime for 2 consecutive days, and I stayed up the night yesterday. I really can't carry it today. The main reason is that there are almost no manuscripts in my hand. There are only some things that I write and save. I have added 2 chapters. Yesterday and today, 1 for each. Jong, there is no need to work overtime tomorrow, at least 2 shifts. Ankai was very disappointed in his failure to recruit Curry. If Curry can join the shelter, it is indeed a great addition to the shelter. It's a pity that no matter what angle he stands in, there is no reason to stop Curry from seeing his uncle one last time. Even if it is very dangerous in the wild, but Curry would rather face the danger and go, and Kai immediately became speechless. He can only sincerely hope that Curry can reach his destination safely and that no accidents will happen on the road. Ankai is still strengthening the shelter. Both the floor and the top surface of the wall can be reinforced. The reinforcement process is 2 wood reinforcements, 1 iron reinforcement, 1 steel reinforcement, 1 concrete reinforcement, on top of the concrete reinforcement, and 2 steel reinforcements. The final reinforcement results are as follows. The standard of the system will have a durability value of 7,000. This is not simply a game-like HP setting. The durability of anything, even if it is not used or attacked, will continue to drop. The specific manifestation is constant aging and decay, and this process is much faster than normal, so even the top-level reinforcement needs to be continuously repaired by Ankai to maintain it. Of course, the defensive power is also very strong. In the concrete reinforcement stage, the durability is as high as 3,000. Ankai has done experiments. At his current level, coupled with the strongest tool he can make, it takes about 200 hits in the same place to break it. If you use a thermal weapon to attack, the effect of bullets is the worst. Grenades are slightly stronger. Unless it is a related military weapon that requires time and expertise, it is not a fantasy to break such a defense, but it is also very difficult. In this process, the personnel in the shelter can completely attack the enemy frantically and maintain the durability of the defense from another angle. Today, Kai and Mary are going out again. Only this time they are not going to the Southern District. I went to the Southern District to search for a bar before, and gained a lot. After fighting the Wild Dog Gang, Kai took Mary there twice, but the purpose of the latter two was mainly to collect various materials. Especially electrical parts, which are currently more needed by Kai. There are a large number of electrical appliances in the bar. These electrical appliances are the best source of electrical parts. Of course, different electrical appliances and electrical parts are different, but they are the same for the system, which is nothing more than a difference in quantity. For example, a floor-standing air conditioner can remove 12 electrical parts, while a Walkman can only remove 1. There is no difference between the electrical parts, and the only difference is the quantity. But because of the sneak attack by the Wild Dog Gang, Kai was still a little late. I have to say that the survivors who can live to the present, more or less have a brush. It's not that no one dares to go to that place in the Southern District. In fact, the streets in the Southern District are relatively safe. The most dangerous place is inside the building. As long as you don't venture in, the problem is not big. Kai cleaned the bar directly, but it made a few survivors cheaper. When Kai passed by, in addition to one survivor who had already settled there, it was also raided by many survivors. Although the real good things have been taken away by Kai and Mary, the value of what is left is still huge. The same is true for those building materials. Among other things, isn't wood important? Other survivors may not be able to make full use of the wood like Kai did, but it's good to take it back and burn it on fire. And those beddings are all good fabrics. Kai might not use it, and it's not. The fabric is of course useful and very useful. It was temporarily placed in the bar because it was impossible to hold it before. This thing is also extremely useful for other survivors. At least, is it not good to take it back as a dress? Now that the weather is getting colder and the temperature is beginning to drop, winter is coming on heavenly horse, and the demand for warmth is beginning to ascension. It stands to reason that there are still a lot of things in cities, and it can be said that they are everywhere. Nowadays, there are only a few survivors. Compared with the population of the city before the end of the day, let alone 1 in 10, it is not easy for 1,000 people to survive. So it is not difficult to find cloth itself. The difficulty is how to find clean cloth. It has been half a year since the end of the day. Most of the things in the city have become dirty. If you want to use it, you have to clean it. To be honest, this is not a simple matter for a single survivor. Even if the river bank is next to a river, how safe is it to go out to wash clothes? In short, if you can find clean fabrics, everyone naturally knows how to choose. As a result, when Kai went to the bar again, what he saw was a scene that had been ransacked. He was also very helpless, but he couldn't say anything. After all, he gave up here temporarily at that time. Could it be possible to prevent others from coming in? Therefore, Kai can only dismantle a large number of electrical equipment, and then take away all the dismantled electrical parts, circuit boards, plastics, wires, glass and other resources. These things are well preserved, and the survivors have almost no need for electrical appliances. Of course, it's not really there. It's just that there is no electricity now, and the survivors rarely have generators. Even if they do, the ones that are really useful to them are appliances like refrigerators and air conditioners, like TVs, even if they're a little bit. It's useless, there is no signal anymore. Could it be that I moved back just to watch the snow screen? Kai wants large-scale construction and needs a lot of wood, but to be honest, although there is a lot of wood available in the city, if you really want to get a lot of wood, you still have to go to the wild. So this is also their main purpose for going out today. I was thinking of getting some first use in the bar, but the wood was removed and Kai simply went out directly. To some extent, the danger in the wild exceeds that of the city. After all, the city has convenient terrain, even if there are many zombies and dents, but as long as the location is good and the powerful firepower is used, it is not difficult to destroy zombies in groups. The wild is different. The terrain is open and flat, and there are not enough complicated terrain. Those beasts infected with the zombie virus are said to have more combat power than zombies, and more than a lot, so if you want to go out to find resources, you are facing risks. It will be huge. Fortunately, Kai has strong firepower and well-equipped equipment, Plus they can shoot relatively freely in the wild, so the wild is not that dangerous for Enkai and Mary. Driving the beloved little jeep, there was no traffic jam all the way, and it went smoothly. The two of them bypassed 3 or 4 large groups of zombies and drove out of the riverbank area. The world's environmental protection is well done. Not far from the city, there are patches of forest outside. I found a place where the trees were relatively thick and the terrain was relatively flat. He turned the car over, and Enkai took out the chainsaw from his backpack. Actually, it can't be called a chainsaw. A more accurate way of saying it is a hand saw. Use it and then drive it. Cutting trees is super convenient. Enkai is absolutely indispensable. He has 2 hand saws on his body. He can't repair or build these things at the moment. He searched them all, so he had to have one more. After hitting the hand saw, Enkai came to a big tree with a diameter of 30 centimeters, raised the hand saw, aimed at the place where the root of the big tree was 30 centimeters from the ground, and fiercely stuck the saw blade on it. In the next second, large swaths of sawdust began to fly. The efficiency of sawing wood with a hand saw is much faster than cutting with an axe. Enkai has used wood to cut trees before, of course, the trees on both sides of the city streets. On average, to chop down a tree with a thick bowl, he needs at least 20 swings of his axe. Now, to saw a tree as thick as a footbath, it only takes 1 minute to hold a hand saw. Regardless of the time and physical consumption, I don't know how much it has been reduced. And more importantly, the profit of using a hand saw is much higher than that of an axe. Cut down a tree, he can get 50 pieces of wood, and use a hand saw to cut down a tree. He harvested 223 pieces of wood, 4 times the previous amount. Of course, the tree he saw was much stronger than the one he had cut down before, but in fact, depending on the size of the tree, there is no significant difference in the amount of wood provided. If you use an axe, even if it is a relatively large tree, after being cut down, it can provide at most about 150 wood, which is still 100 less than using a hand saw. This is the gap. It saves time and effort, and the output is higher. It is no wonder that tools such as hand saws are manufactured by the most advanced engineers. Compared with the previous tools, they are completely crushed. There are 2 tools that are the same level as the hand saw, the spiral cone and the nail gun. They corresponded to the manuscript and the hammer respectively. Axes, pickaxes, and hammers are also the most commonly used tools. As for other less commonly used tools, some of them will be integrated with the machine in the late stage, and they are hardly used in daily life. There is also a part that has no evolutionary version, and only one type can be used from beginning to end, such as a wrench. All in all, although it is not currently possible to manufacture hand saws, because it can be searched, there is no shortage of tools. For example, Enkai currently has several nail guns. The efficiency of the nail gun is not as exaggerated as a hand saw. The role of the nail gun is to reinforce and manufacture. If the nail gun is used in manufacturing, the amount of materials can be slightly reduced, which is of little significance. The main effect of the nail gun is solidity. Before reinforcement, each reinforcement requires several strikes with a hammer. When there is no nail gun, the hammer is of course very useful, and there is system help. Enkai does not really rely on own strength to reinforce or make from scratch, so in general, use a hammer to reinforce. Every time you reinforce need to beat at least 5 times. With the reinforcement of the level of ascension, this number is also constantly ascension. As I said before, through system manufacturing, almost no physical effort is consumed. But this is almost no consumption, not completely non-consumption, more or less consumption is still there. And if you beat it 5 times, it takes a lot of time to tell the truth. After all, once you need to reinforce, it is not 1 piece or 2 pieces, but a large area to reinforce. Each reinforcement only has a range of almost 1 meter square, similar to the shelter of a pharmaceutical factory. Therefore, it takes about 3 to 5 days for Enkai to fully reinforce it once. But it's different with a nail gun. Use the nail gun to press lightly on the place to be reinforced, and the reinforcement is completed in 1 piece. It is so fast, and there is no doubt that the physical consumption of this method is really almost nothing. He can easily reinforce the entire shelter in 1 day. In addition to the huge consumption of materials, the most consuming is the battery. In fact, most nail guns in reality use air pumps. The main thing is convenience. The air pump converts electricity into high-pressure gas, and the high-pressure gas brings a powerful force to drive the nail directly into the wall or wooden board. So the biggest difference is the difference in power. There are electric nail guns, but the failure rate is also quite high. The air nail gun has a simple structure and light weight, making it easier to use. In fact, aircraft carrier ejection still uses steam ejection. Compared with electromagnetic ejection, it is a bit too complicated. In addition, in the real life, many other tools can be powered by air pumps. Simply change the electric nail gun, and the air pump still needs to be used, so there is no need to use electric nails. But also use some work that does not require much reasoning. You can use electric nail guns, such as plaster line installers, cabinet installers, or soft package installers. These people will choose electric nail guns because the air pump is really heavy. In the system, the electric nail gun is used, because at this level, there is no need for any force to boost. What power does the chainsaw need? Except for a little effort when carrying it, there is almost no effort in the whole process. Nail guns are also more of a symbolic existence. Anyway, just nailing a place is strengthened. Is there a difference between air guns and nail guns? No, far away. Let's talk about Ankai's side. With a hand saw, the work efficiency is greatly ascension. In just half a morning, he saw down several big trees. Because the thickness of the trees is different, the wood obtained is different, but even so, he also got with more than 1,000 pieces of wood. The harvest is not small. If he knocks wood in the city with an axe, it may take 2 to 3 days for him to harvest so much. Therefore, if he targets a certain resource alone and finds a suitable place, the collection speed is still very fast. Of course, don't think that 1,000 pieces of wood are too great. In fact, this is Ankai's shelter in the city. If he wants to build a shelter in the wild, this 1,000 pieces of wood will probably be able to build a few small wooden houses. If you want to make something large, it's not enough. The construction items in the system are never limited to doors and windows, walls, foundations, floors, ceilings, roofs, fences, handrails. There are too many. If you really want to do your own DIY, the system can provide a variety of constructions project. Ankai has always wanted to DIY a shelter by herself. In the city, there are advantages in the city, but there are also disadvantages. In the wild, it is actually not much worse than in the city. The system is his trump card. He has such confidence if he has the system. But unfortunately, he needs a lot of time and tools to make the system construction bar fully functional, especially tools like hand saws and nail guns. Nail guns are actually okay. Although there are not many hardware tools stores, they can still be found occasionally. Hand saws are too difficult to find. There are no logging yards around this city, and the demand for hand saws in the whole city is very small. As for the spiral cone, it is even more difficult to find. In the urban area, generally only municipal engineering and construction sites can find it. However, this thing is too big, and the places Ankai can think of, others can naturally think of. So the best way is to self-control, but it is a pity that not only can he not self-control, he can't even repair it, so this is very troublesome. Relying on his own words, collecting materials is a big problem. Now there is Mary, but Mary can't enjoy too much convenience. Even if she is equipped with other tools, she can't be honest with her physical strength. What a role, almost, does not consume physical energy, which only Ankai can enjoy. Mary equipped with tools can only enjoy the convenience that is different from ordinary tools, but physical energy consumption is completely normal. All in all, if you want to build a shelter yourself, you must at least be a 5th-level engineer who can manufacture and repair advanced tools. So, after all, there is a long way to go. Ankai took a break for a while, and kept holding the hand saw. After a long time, he would be sleepy. However, when he was resting, there was a sudden low roar behind him. The roar seemed to be suppressed deep in his throat. Although it was sent out, it did not spread. Ankai's face changed slightly, and he stood up immediately. And Mary already had a dagger in her hand and rushed past him. Ankai switched out the weapon at the fastest speed and turned around abruptly, only to see that Mary had rushed in front of a gray bear. This bear looks like a small tank. Standing up, I am afraid it can be 3 meters high. Of course, this is not the most important thing. The most important thing is the state of the bear at this time. I saw its mouth wide open. Dirty saliva left from the corners of the mouth. One eye was blind, the other eye was sickly pale. There were sores and decayed wounds all over the body, and the bear had a big face. The lump is as rotten as if it was broken by someone with sulfuric acid. Alien animal infected with zombie virus. Alien beasts are beasts that have been upgraded after being infected with the zombie virus. There are also differences between alien beasts and zombies. If the two are compared, zombies are closer to dead corpses, while alien beasts are more energetic. Why is there such a difference? And Kai doesn't know, he only knows that alien beasts are more dangerous than zombies. The physical quality of the beast is higher than that of normal human beings. After being infected by the zombie virus, it has added the attributes of fear of death and pain, and its combat power can be said to have doubled. If human beings still have various weapons to maintain their superiority when facing wild beasts, then facing alien beasts, general weapons are really meaningless. For example, pistols, the power of ordinary pistols, it is difficult to smash the skulls and bones of alien animals, unless it is a powerful pistol like Magnum. Mary, get away! And Kai shouted. Although Mary is very powerful, no matter how powerful she is definitely not the bear's opponent, not to mention the zombie bear. Mary turned a deaf ear and rushed to the front of the zombie bear. The bear's paw was blowing in the wind and swept towards her. She had a sliding shovel on the spot. Don't get me wrong, Mary didn't have a slippery shovel to come under the bear, but rushed to the side to avoid the attack of the zombie bear. The zombie bear reacted quickly and immediately turned around to pounce on Mary. And Kai finally aimed at the zombie bear at this time, aimed at its back, and fired directly. It's actually not easy for bears, such large creatures, to be hunted by guns. Their fat and muscles are the best defense against bullets. The kinetic energy of a bullet with strong kinetic energy will be reduced layer by layer when it penetrates muscle and fat. Of course, the bear will hurt even if it is shot down. It does not mean that it will not be injured if it is blocked by fat and muscle. But after all, bears are not humans, and their ability to resist bullets is much stronger than humans. Not to mention the zombie bear in front of him, it is not even afraid of pain, and even if the internal organs are injured, they will not die easily. So when the shot went down, it only knocked out a large piece of carrion, and the zombie bear didn't even turn around. Hurry up! After Kai determined that Magnum was unable to effectively kill the zombie bear, he immediately switched the rifle. The power of a rifle is huge among firearms. Before on the Earth, many countries couldn't ban guns, but that was only for pistols and shotguns. Rifles were banned from circulation by almost any government with sufficient strength. Because the rifle has a long range and great power, it is no longer a weapon that the civilians should hold. At this moment Mary just got up. The zombie bear rushed in front of her. She suddenly ran forward 2 steps, rushed to a big tree, kicked her legs on the trunk several times, her body quickly vacated, and then a backflip, fell behind the zombie bear. After 2 laps on the ground, Mary quickly got up and backed away. The big tree she used as a pedal was slapped frantically by the zombie bear. The trunks were trembling, and the leaves fell down. There was a huge scratch on the trunk, and a large piece of bark was torn in an instant. This power is really scary. If this is caught on a person, let alone anything else, there is really no problem at all to tear off a dozen caddies of meat all at once. The zombie bear's attack failed, and with a roar, he turned and rushed to Mary again. And Mary had been backing away at this time and retreated to Kai's side. The main reason why Kai only fired 1 shot was because she was afraid of accidentally hurting Mary. The bullet doesn't have eyes, but don't kill the zombie bear, but kill Mary. Then Kai really has no place to cry. Fortunately, Mary has now retreated to his side, and continues to retreat, ready to return to the car to get a weapon. A rifle really may not be able to kill this zombie bear. Just as Mary continued to retreat and the zombie bear turned around, Kai shot again. This shot finally hit the zombie bear in the head. However, the other party just tilted his head and continued to rush up. Kai cursed the country and shot again. The power of the rifle is still big enough. Although it can't kill the zombie bear with 1 shot, the impact of the bullet makes it stop after a constant charge. Mary had also returned to the car, took off her rifle, and took turns firing with Kai. 2 guns against zombie bears are much safer. Relying on the impact of the bullets, the zombie bear's charge was invalidated. And Kai and Mary could take turns shooting more easily, and then they kept retreating. Finally, after shooting the 10th rifle bullet, the zombie bear fell to the ground without a word. To be honest, this zombie bear is really much more difficult to deal with than ordinary zombies. The biggest horror of human zombies lies in the number and density. Zombies have always been not terrible, so what about 10? How about 100, 1,000 and 10,000? The number of humans is large, and most of them are concentrated in the cities. Therefore, after the end of the day, zombies will roam the streets in groups, and a little movement can attract zombies in half of the block, leaving the survivors overwhelmed, lost heavily. The zombie beasts are relatively small in number and widely distributed, and the density is not increased, but the individual threats are relatively high. The same shot with a rifle. If you start the head, the human zombies are shot one at a time, and the zombie bears used up 10 rounds of rifle bullets from Ankai and the others. What's even more depressing is that the bullet is used, but the gain is very small, almost equal to nothing. Of course, it cannot be said that there is nothing at all. If nothing else, bear bones are still useful. Needless to say, skin and meat are useless, at least for Ankai. He knew from the system that these meats were not completely uneatable, but they needed to be sterilized. The process is the same as that of a water purifier. It can be sterilized by using tablets. But how to put it, even if the zombie virus is eliminated, the meat has already rotted, unless there is really nothing to eat and is about to starve to death, otherwise Ankai will never eat this thing. The same is true for bearskins, which have already rotted out with bald patches, and there are many holes that rot together with the meat. Even if they are peeled off, it is of little significance. On the contrary, it is a bear bone, which can be used to boil glue. Glue is a necessity to make tape, and tape is a necessary material for many system projects. It can be said that in the late stage of the system, the role of tape will become more and more important. But the problem is, there is really no shortage of tape in cities. This thing cannot be eaten or drunk. Although it is not completely useless, it is not as important as food and weapons. Moreover, tape is also a common product in daily life. The tape storage in a city is definitely not small. And Kai has never specifically searched for tape. Every time he just took it by hand, more than 200 units of tape were stored in the warehouse, which was enough for him to use it for a long time. If he is looking for it seriously, even if this number is increased tenfold, it will be easy. So it was a waste of time for him to boil glue with bones. What's more, if you really want to boil glue, the bones of zombies can also be used, and there is not much difference between the two. Therefore, it took a lot of effort to kill a zombie bear, but the result was pitiful. It can be said that Ankai suffered a lot. But there is no way, this thing ran out when he was cutting logs. Even if he didn't attack him this time, as long as he found it, he would definitely not let it go. Wood is the most in-demand material in system projects, and there is no one. Its importance, running through almost all the important equipment in the late stage of the system, Ankai is now going to upgrade. To start a new round of experience brushing behavior, wood is a necessity, and it is a large amount of necessity. So this small forest is already regarded by him as his own private property. How can he let others sleep soundly on the side of the couch? Take out a small bottle of gasoline from the backpack and set the zombie bear's body on fire. It's not good to leave this thing here, it's better to burn it directly into ashes. Today's harvest has been very big, and Kai is also ready to stop. The backpacks of the two of them are already full, and the back of the jeep is also full of wood. The resource harvest of this trip is huge, and it is almost time to go back. After waiting for the fire on the bear to go out, the two of them drove home. When they reached the door of the shelter, and Kai saw a man standing in front of the door of the shelter from a distance, with his hands on his chest and his back. A compound bow, looks like an outsider. It is indeed an expert outside the world. This is the person Ankai has seen before shooting a zombie by 3 arrows. This person's name is Philip. He is very famous in the Riverside area. Before the end, he was the head coach of the archery club here. He was a figure who won a silver medal in the federal sports competition. It is said that when the Doomsday came, this person was teaching in the club. When zombies suddenly appeared in the club and everyone panicked, only he calmly protected more than 100 people with the bow and arrow in his hand. It's a pity that some of these people were infected and some were eaten by zombies. In addition, He didn't have any management skills, so he could only become a lone wolf lone ranger in the end. But his strength is beyond doubt, let alone those same lone wolf survivors. Even the 3 big gangs before the river bank are not willing to offend him. He is a relatively special existence in the riverside area. And Kai and Philip have only one side, and they don't know what Philip is asking for himself. After thinking about it, he drove the car to the door of the shelter, opened the single door of the shelter, and asked Mary to release the car. While carrying a rifle on his back, he came to Philip. "Philip, long time no see." And Kai stepped forward to say hello. He and Philip also knew each other. At that time, seeing this person 3 arrows and a zombie, and Kai was shocked as diva and immediately went forward to make friends. The method of friendship is also very simple, just a few cans of meat. And Kai eats the whole family alone and is not hungry, and has the skill of scavengers. Although it is true that sometimes food will enter a more stressful state, in fact, he has never really lacked food. And it was good even without a meal. In the final analysis, it is because he does not go out every day to search like other survivors. His search efficiency is relatively high, so he can spend more time to upgrade. When you upgrade, you will inevitably ignore the grain reserves. When you notice, the grain reserves in the warehouse will be running low. This is the source of the so-called tension. In fact, whenever his food is tense, he will immediately go out and search, and then come back with a lot of food. The truth is that he has never worried about this bite of food, pass. So he had extra canned food to make friends with Philip. Of course, the 2 were acquaintances in general, and Philip himself was not short of food, so he did not accept Kai's gift at the time. But in any case, the 2 have had a relationship, and they can be regarded as nodding acquaintances. "Have not seen you for a long time." Philip smiled slightly. This is a more mature and stable man. He is about 40 years old, but he is still handsome, with a fragment of blonde hair shining in the sun. "You are a distinguished guest. Come on, don't stand outside, come in and sit for a while." The door opened and Ankai invited Philip into the shelter. Of course Philip would not refuse, and followed Ankai and entered. Like Curry, Philip was surprised at everything in the shelter. But his expression was not as exaggerated as Curry, but his eyes were slightly widened, showing a curious expression. He did it himself. Before Ankai could speak, Mary, who had parked the car, spoke directly. Ankai was speechless. He hadn't planned to say that 2 people did it this time. He knew that Mary would definitely not admit it, but he was still a little depressed when he was blocked by others. "You did it all by yourself." Philip was really surprised this time. Of course he would not be stupid enough to think that Ankai built this house himself, that would be really stupid. But look at the reinforced layer in the shelter, and look at the neatly arranged rows of equipment, who will be surprised if they change it. Ankai took Philip around the sanctuary, and the last 2 came to the meeting room on the 2nd floor. In fact, it was an ordinary office in the workshop office, but it was transformed into a living room by Ankai. He made some simple furniture through the system and placed it here, which can also be used as a place for him and Mary to relax and entertain. Oh, they can only rest. They don't have any entertainment yet. For the other rooms, the 1st floor is currently unused, half of the office on the 2nd floor is unused, and the other half has been transformed by Ankai into a living room, a study and dining room, 2 bedrooms, and 2 bathrooms, the kind that can take a shower. This is the place where he and Mary live daily, so he will specially plan the most of the space in the workshop. He did not make a very detailed plan, but put everything together. Although it is neat and tidy, it looks something nondescript. In fact, Ankai only used less than 1/10 of this pharmaceutical factory. The workshop they are in is one of the 3 workshops of the factory. Behind this workshop, there are 2 workshops. There were also zombies before, but they have all been cleaned up. In addition, there is a special office building, an above-ground warehouse with the same area as the workshop, and an underground warehouse. Ankai doesn't know how big the area is, anyway, it's big. He chose this place as a shelter at first, on the one hand because it is a pharmaceutical factory, which has a large amount of raw materials needed to make medicines, and the other reason is that the walls of this pharmaceutical factory are much higher than those of ordinary factories and the height has reached 4 meters. Many zombies are absolutely impossible to enter over the wall, so the zombies that existed in the factory before were basically workers stranded here, or ordinary people who hid when the Doomsday came, but they were caught after they hid. Infection eventually turned into a zombie. For such a huge factory, let alone in Kai and Mary, it is more than enough for 20 people to live in. It can even be said that if the bathroom, living room and kitchen are removed, it is just a workshop office. It's almost enough for 20 people per room, so the area is very large. Ankai and the others can live wherever they want. I chose this workshop because it is the closest to the factory gate, so it's more convenient to get in and out. The two sat down and Ankai poured a glass of water for Philip before looking at each other. You are a rare visitor, why do you think of me here? Since repelling the wild dog gang, Ankai has become famous in the riverbank area, and now the entire riverbank area is almost unknown to him. I'm here to join the shelter. Philip picked up the water glass, drank half a glass of water, and said. It seemed that he was a little thirsty, and his lips were a little chapped, but his mental head was good, and his eyes were as sharp as eagle eyes. You want to join the shelter? Why? Ankai was a little surprised. Based on what he knew about Philip, in fact, he didn't know much, but from the simple meeting before them, he could probably feel that Philip was a person who liked quietness and didn't like crowded places. And he looks very cold and handsome, no matter what, he fits the setting of a lonely hero. So Ankai never thought that Philip would take the initiative to ask to join the asylum. He felt that there was a lack of people under his hand, and he did not want to invite Philip in the past. Why, isn't it welcome? Philip frowned. That actually is not, and Kai shook his head, just how to say, I always feel that you are like a lonely hero. And Kai is naturally telling the truth. After hearing his explanation, Philip smiled and shook his head helplessly. In this world, lone heroes also have to eat, not to mention that I never think of myself as a lone hero. I just don't like talking too much. If I'm really out of gregariousness, you think I might go to an archery club. Are you a coach? I want to eat too. As soon as Philip said these words, his appearance resembling a lonely hero instantly collapsed. Ah, well, I judge people by their appearance. And Kai admits that he is superficial. So what do you say, are you willing to let me join? Philip looked at Ankai and asked. Of course, Philip, I can't ask for you to join. Ankai smiled and stretched out her hand. At the same time, in front of him, he avoided Philip's member panel. Very good, except that agility is slightly lower than Mary, only level 4, all other attributes surpass Mary, and also surpass Ankai. In terms of personal combat effectiveness, Philip can be said to have completely exploded the two of them. The skills are also very good. Philip has a level 3 driving, a level 2 electrician and a level 1 marathon. This marathon is not the one in the Ankai skills column, but a marathon in sports. If there are skills, it means that Philip has specially trained and has reached the professional level, but it is relatively weak. Of course he has many other life skills, but those are not important, what really matters is his shooting skills. Archery level 8. This is where Philip really beeps. It is more agile than Mary's level 5, and is third level higher in registration. It is a proper professional athlete, and it is among the top athletes. Of course, his loyalty is not as high as Mary, only one is more loyal. But this is also not bad. After all, Ankai and Philip have only met once before, and they have no deep friendship. In the system member panel, loyalty is divided into 7 levels. From top to bottom, they are very loyal, loyal, relatively loyal, ordinary, disloyal, double-minded, and traitor. Needless to say, the traitor, that is the guy who will betray the shelter, and is relatively loyal. It looks first level higher than ordinary, but at this level, as long as Ankai does not live up to the other party, the loyalty of the other party is only will ascending will not drop. The big deal is to maintain the current situation unshakable, will fight heroically when encountering a battle, and theoretically will not betray. A higher level of loyalty only represents a person's degree of recognition of the shelter. The higher the degree of recognition, the stronger the subjective initiative. For example, Mary's very loyalty is the highest level, and she treats the shelter as her own family. If you are more loyal, you will only regard the shelter as a company, other people as colleagues, and the tasks here as work. Of course, employees will not be casual when there are no accidents. Just leave or change jobs. All in all, Ankai is quite satisfied with Philip. The loyalty is not high enough that he can accept it, and the skills are strong. As long as he does not betray, he can meet his minimum needs. I still don't quite understand why you want to join the shelter. Having been able to confirm Philip's loyalty, Enkai let go of a hanging heart. The only thing he had doubts about now was the reason Philip had joined the asylum. Of course, he was just pure curiosity. He was not worried that Philip was a spy. Need a reason? Philip looked at Enkai and said. Just ask casually. Enkai smiled. It's very difficult for a person to survive alone. You need to be careful of being surrounded by zombies, and beware of other survivors, and I don't have many arrows. It is estimated that the last half sentence is the real reason. Nowadays, almost the entire Federation is shut down, and such things as arrows, whether ancient or modern, have high technology content. Philip alone can't make arrows. The fewer arrows he uses, the smaller and smaller his living space becomes, until he can't survive at all. So joining a shelter, getting new companions and more weapons is the way to survive. Enkai shelter has become famous recently, and it is reasonable to attract Philip. In addition, there is another reason that prompted me to join the shelter. Philip didn't stop, he looked at Enkai with a serious expression. Just yesterday afternoon, I met a very strange zombie in the Green Tree Vine Bar. The Green Tree Vine Bar is a small bar at the junction of the East District and the Central District. Weird zombie. Enkai was startled slightly, and asked subconsciously. Yes, its appearance is no different from other zombies. The only difference is that this zombie has a relatively large belly and moves very slowly. I didn't think much about it at the time, but just killed it. However, I was ready to go. During the previous search, the dead body suddenly exploded. It was very powerful. It blew up half of the Green Tree Vine Bar, and it was much more powerful than a grenade. Philip said calmly. In fact, it can be seen from his trembling right hand that his heart is far less calm than he showed. Zombies that will explode. Enkai's face also changed slightly. Upgraded, he can only think of this possibility. Maybe it is, maybe it's not certain at this time. Philip shook his head. His news is very important. If the zombies will be upgraded again, then the threat of the zombies will continue ascension. Just like the zombie movie or the zombie game you have seen before crossing, once the zombie changes, the danger of the entire zombie group will be greatly ascension. This is not only the strength of individual zombies, but more importantly, the emergence of upgraded zombies will ascension the threat of the entire zombie group. Generally, zombies seem to be easy to deal with. Although the number is huge, it is not difficult to destroy zombies in large quantities as long as the terrain is favorable. But once upgraded zombies are added, it is easy for people to lose sight of one another with a large number of ordinary zombies. If they are all ordinary zombies, just push the position directly. However, when the upgraded zombies join, the powerful individual strength of the upgraded zombies makes people have to focus on fire to destroy them. At this time, it is easy to ignore the ordinary zombies. The suppression, once surrounded by a group of zombies, it would be a dead end. But if the upgraded zombie is left alone, its powerful individual power can easily destroy the line of defense established by the survivors. All in all, the appearance of upgraded zombies will definitely destroy the fragile balance between humans and zombies. The zombies that Philip said have similar images in many games. Enkai has seen this type of zombies in games such as Rotten Kingdom 2 and Dying Light before. Although the images of exploding zombies are different in different games, there is no doubt that these guys the threat is not small. This information made Enkai feel a little heavy. His shelter has just stabilized. There was originally a threat of wild dog gangs from outside. As a result, zombies also appeared and upgraded, and the future life may become more and more difficult. Okay, let's not talk about it, Philip. Anyway, I'm very grateful for the news you brought. You should take a shower first, and then take a rest. From now on, we will rely on you for daily patrols of the shelter. NS. It is impossible to have such a master shooting master without him. For daily patrols, he is definitely much better than Enkai himself and Mary. Perhaps you can give me a gun. To tell the truth, my arrows are almost running out. Philip shrugged and said, pointing to the quiver behind his back. He is equipped with professional equipment, and the arrows stored in his quiver are all he has. Unlike bullets, arrows can be recycled, but the arrows themselves are also depleted. If they are used too much, they will become bald or even break directly. It has been half a year since the end of the day. The arrows on Philip can last so long. It's really not easy. No problem, you can also want guns and bullets, as well as arrows. I have found a lot of arrows here. In addition, I can also make arrows for you to ensure that you will never be short of ammunition in the future. And Kai said with a smile. There are not many arrows here, only less than 50, which he has accumulated continuously. This thing is not common in daily life, only archery clubs and some sports shops will have it, and the general purchase quantity is not too much. After all, this thing is really hard for ordinary people to play, and it may hurt people. It's not cost effective. Can you still make arrows? Philip was surprised. Certainly, and Kai smiled. He can even make bullets, not to mention some arrows. There are 4 grades of arrows in the system, namely stone arrows, bone arrows, iron arrows and modern arrows. The highest level of modern arrows can be made by an engineer at level 3. It requires scrap metal, plastic, string and glue. Ankai is not short of these things. Although it is not rich, but it is not a problem to take out some to make arrows. And arrows are the same thing as bullets. There are 30 in a unit. He only needs a little material to make a lot of arrows. He didn't make it before because he didn't use bows and arrows himself, and he didn't add various skills to them. What's more, he has a gun, so would he care about bows and arrows? Of course, bows and arrows also have the advantages of bows and arrows. One of the biggest advantages is silent shooting. No matter how good a gun is equipped with a silencer, there is sound. It is nothing more than a very strong gun sound without a silencer. With a silencer, the gun sound can be suppressed, but it is not necessary to completely eliminate the gun sound, possible. The silencer works well against zombies, but when it comes to humans, the shortcomings of the pistol are exposed. It is easy for the enemy to follow the gunfire to find the position of the gunman. Moreover, the bullet cannot be turned, which is not conducive to the hidden position of the gunner. Bows and arrows are different. They are silent. Archers can also actively control the direction of bows and arrows through wind direction and wind. As long as they can hide, it is not difficult to kill the enemy silently. Philip went to take a bath first, then ate something and drank a cup of coffee, and then followed Ankai to the workbench. The materials are readily available, and Ankai easily only made dozens of arrows. Philip stretched out his hand to pick up one, stroked it lightly, feeling the center and balance of the arrow, and couldn't help but sigh with emotion. I began to believe that you made these things by yourself. I didn't expect that you still have such an ability. Although it is not as good as those top arrows, it is already very good. It is almost as good as mine. Really, it's incredible. The more Philip looked, the more he liked it, and suddenly picked up the compound bow at hand, but he didn't see him aiming. The arrow just stuck on Gong's body, and the arrow disappeared from his hand in the next second. The arrow accurately hit the steel frame above, making a clink. Philip stretched out his hand to catch the fallen arrow, observed the arrow, and found that the arrow was not obviously damaged, and he was more satisfied. No problem, leave it to me for the patrol of the shelter in the future. Okay, hold this gun, just in case. Although Philip is a master of archery, and Kai can't just provide him with arrows. This thing has advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is that there is no sound. The disadvantage is that the rate of fire and power are not as good as guns. Anyway, and Kai and Mary found them in a bar. There are a lot of weapons, and it is not a problem to match Philip directly. Philip did not refuse, and of course accepted the pistol. At this point, the third member of the sanctuary finally appeared. Although it was not Curry, it would be fine if it was replaced by Philip. And Kai was very satisfied. With Philip guarding the sanctuary, he can go out to collect various resources more at ease, and his confidence in dealing with the wild dog gang has become even stronger. Just when Ankai was awarded a general, there was a shelter made up of a large number of containers in the warehouse area of the river bank. We can't go on any longer. The reputation of our wild dog gang can't be ruined like this. We must retaliate, and we must kill them. A man with a big bald head full of scars roared. Retaliation must be revenge, otherwise our wild dog gang will be regarded as soft persimmon by other survivors, but we still need to discuss how to retaliate. A man with glasses said. But the glasses on his face did not make him appear more gentle, but because of the narrowed eyes and the scars on his face, the whole person appeared more dangerous. You may not know that, just this morning, Philip appeared at the door of the shelter. Another fat man continued. Philip, the archery runner-up. Asshole, he dared to be an enemy of the Wild Dog Gang. That guy is very strong, I'm afraid we are not opponents. How so? Don't worry, it's not necessarily, maybe it's just there. But I have to be careful. Suddenly, there was a faint sound around him. It can be seen that Philip is still very strong in the minds of these people. When ordinary people heard Philip's face, they couldn't help but turn pale. The headed man's face became cold, and he patted the table vigorously. Shut up all. Fat, you go on. He looked at the fat man. I've already inquired. Philip met the man half a month ago, but they haven't had any contact since then. This should be the second contact. I will send someone to stare at it. Once there is a new situation, I will come back immediately, report. As he was talking, there was a loud noise outside, and then a young man with a yellow hair ran in. Go in, boss, Philip has gone in that shelter. As soon as this statement was made, the surrounding crowd looked even more horrified, and several people's legs began to tremble. Why panic? Get out. The man on the main seat roared and immediately suppressed everyone around him. Go out, stop here, said the man with glasses. Those who can appear in this room are basically the core of the Wild Dog Gang. After annexing the Hungry Wolf Gang, the former members of the Hungry Wolf Gang have now become peripheral members of the Wild Dog Gang, and the original members of the Wild Dog Gang have now become core figures one by one. Not many, only 20 people. I originally called these people here because I wanted everyone to brainstorm and consider how to deal with Enkai and Mary. In the end, nothing was discussed, but the news that Philip had joined the asylum made people panic. Also, the so-called core members of this gang were originally a group of ordinary gangsters. It's okay to bully and bully ordinary people. I hope they can have some great talents. That's too much. All the senior leaders of the Wild Dog Gang were also helpless, but they couldn't solve this situation. In fact, there are many elites among the survivors. For example, Philip is one of them. In addition to Philip, Enkai knows several people who can be called social elites in peaceful times. It's just that he didn't try to recruit. To be honest, as long as he has enough skill points, he can become an almighty genius, so for elites like chemists, his needs are there, but not particularly large. On the contrary, it is Philip and Mary such a master of combat flow, which he is currently in desperate need. What's more, even if he wants to recruit, people may not be willing to join. The more elite you are, the more arrogant you are. Unless you really can't survive, it is not easy to recruit, and sometimes it may be troublesome to recruit. After all, the more you study, the more reactionary is actually justified in many cases. An educated person thinks more and often has his own understanding of various situations in life. This kind of person, I can't say that this kind of situation is bad, but it certainly doesn't meet Enkai's needs. What Enkai needs are people who follow orders, not people who find faults everywhere. Of course, the shelter will develop in the future, the scale will be larger, the staff will be more, and similar social elites will definitely be needed, but at this stage forget it, he doesn't want other voices in the own shelter. As for the Wild Dog Gang, that is another situation. Enkai does not want social elites, and the Wild Dog Gang cannot recruit social elites. Even if it's the end of the world, the decent people don't look down on the gang, or that sentence, unless it is really going to be unable to survive. The Wild Dog Gang wants to recruit a former social elite, it is too difficult. It's much harder than Enkai. Of course, less elite ones are okay, but to put it bluntly, most of the survivors, even social elites, are just ordinary people in peaceful times. They have never had any combat experience and have always lived in a peaceful environment. Now that the end is coming, the threat of zombies alone has made these people frightened. Even if they join the Wild Dog Gang, it is really hard to say how much help they can provide in dealing with Enkai. I have always wondered where did that guy come from so many guns and bullets, as well as silencers. These things are munitions. Didn't he search a military base? The big bald head said uncomfortably. Their Wild Dog Gang was one of the 3 big gangs before, and now it is the largest gang in the river bank. It is reasonable to say that there are many people, and they also control warehouses and highway intersections. As a result, they have not found a rifle and bullets. Very limited, let alone the silencer. This issue is currently the most unclear to the senior management of the Wild Dog Gang. Maybe this person has a military background, maybe he can get these things. The news I got yesterday, just a few days ago, that man took his woman and wiped out the zombies in a bar in the south, according to those who went in. The survivors of the past said that the bullets they used alone exceeded 500 rounds. Guys, this is not a small number. We now have less than 300 rounds of bullets, so I have reason to believe that there must be more bullets, so even if he is not our enemy, we must not let him go. When the man with spectacles spoke, his eyes narrowed, leaving only a slit. But the faintly revealed cold light proved that he was full of murderous intent at this moment. It's definitely not possible to let it go, but we must come up with a countermeasure. Unless it's a rush, we can't send a team to sneak and attack. It's too meaningless to do so. The fat man said calmly. The deaths and injuries of 8 people, for today's Wild Dog Gang, although it cannot be said that it is a pain to the bones, but it is definitely very painful. After the Wild Dog Gang annexed the Hungry Wolf Gang, there were only more than 50 people in total. Adding to the 6 jeeps in the previous and the 8 lost in the sneak attack, this is 14 people, more than 1/5. How to make them it doesn't hurt. The other side's shelter was obviously reinforced, the strength was very high, and the firearms were powerful, and there were many bullets. Now there is one more Philip. Unless we are all dispatched and take all the firearms and bullets, it will be difficult for us to shoot. That shelter. A young man behind the big bald head said. This is the biggest problem facing the Wild Dog Gang now. There is also the Lizard Gang. We'd better eliminate the Lizard Gang first. Otherwise, if they both join hands, even if they are in a head-on conflict, we will most likely not be their opponents. As soon as he said this, there was even more silence in the room. However, there is no good way for everyone, so how to deal with Ankai and the Lizard Gang, and to prevent them from joining forces, these people need to think more carefully. On the other side, the Lizard Gang was filled with grief and bleakness. Compared with the Hungry Wolf Gang being destroyed and annexed directly, they are undoubtedly lucky, but they are also unfortunate. The behavior of the wild dogs to help the Black Hand directly caused them to suffer heavy losses, and the number of members was sharply reduced by half. From the original size of 20 people, it suddenly became 10 people. Let's talk about it, what to do next. The Lizard Gang could have made up their minds. There were 5 people in total. Now one of them died directly when the zombies were besieged. Now there are only 3 people who can sit here to discuss countermeasures. 2 men and 1 woman, one of the men with huge faces, said with a tired face. The other 2 looked at each other, and both saw an emotion called helplessness in each other's eyes. Why don't we hire more people? The only female senior said. But before she finished speaking, she stopped herself. Recruitment is simple, but in fact it is not easy to talk about. It is similar to the situation of the Wild Dog Gang, and the Lizard Gang is not seen by ordinary survivors. Of course, the reputation of the Lizard Gang is so much better than that of the Wild Dog Gang. At least they will not kill like the Wild Dog Gang. Even if someone enters their territory, they will at best drive them away. Under the circumstances, the killer will be chosen. To be honest, in fact, they and the Wild Dog Gang can be regarded as the same raccoon dog. It is nothing more than the killing of fewer people, and there is a buffer process before killing, so the reputation is a little better. But it's just a little bit, and it's not enough for ordinary survivors to change their perceptions of them. The group of bastards in the Wild Dog Gang is really too much. If they want to deal with the man named Anne, they should deal directly with them. Why do they use us as bait? The last thin man stretched out his hand and gave a punch on the table, and said very dissatisfied. Now it's useless to say that this is not a day or two for the Wild Dog Gang. They have always wanted to rule the entire river bank area, but before the Hungry Wolves Gang was in front of them, we can get along well. The Hungry Wolves Gang was annexed. At that time, I said, let you be more vigilant, the Wild Dog Gang will definitely choose the time they think is appropriate to start with us. It is your carelessness and neglect of control. This finally caused the problem. Now it is meaningless to scold you. What we should consider now is how to strengthen ourselves and resist the next attack of the Wild Dog Gang. The leading man said in a deep voice. However, if there is a way, they would have used it a long time ago, and now it is really meaningless to talk about it. Or, let's find the man named Anne. He can fight off the attack of the Wild Dog Gang. If we both unite, we don't have to worry about the Wild Dog Gang's invasion. The woman made a suggestion that was not a suggestion. I heard that Anne's shelter has a lot of weapons. They have very powerful firepower, and they have plenty of bullets. Previously, they wiped out all the zombies in a bar to the south and obtained a lot of supplies. If you can unite with them, I believe it will be the Wild Dog Gang didn't dare to act rashly. This is actually a good decision, if Enkai can agree. However, as soon as the voice fell, the thin man next to him refused. We can't unite with them. If we unite with them, wouldn't we offend the Dingo Help even more? At that time, if the Dingo Help puts the main goal on us, what should I do if we can't help it? Let me say, it's better let's strengthen our defenses, seal all the exits, and just hide here. No matter how powerful the Wild Dog Gang is, it is impossible to break our defenses. The big deal is that we won't go out. How can you do it? What about food and water if you don't go out? The woman retorted, we are now less than half of the population. Food and drinking water are still enough for a long time, even if we don't go out, it doesn't matter. The thin man was tit for tat. No, I don't agree. Doesn't it seem that we are afraid of the gangsters of the Wild Dog Gang? Even if we are now half of our staff, we are one of the 3 major gangs in the river bank, so we can't just shrink back. The woman is very spine, and her words are full of firmness. That is to take the initiative to find death. If you want to die, you die by yourself, don't drag others with you. Shouted the man. Everyone is a companion, are you going to split up? Don't slander me, I just don't agree with your plan. You are such a big man, so courageous, what a man. I just don't want everyone to die in vain. The two quarreled with each other. Okay, be quiet. The man sitting in the main seat finally couldn't help but patted the table, which made the 2 people in the quarrel shut their mouths. It's impossible to close all entrances and exits. Although we have enough food and drinking water now, don't forget that food and water will be spoiled. Nowadays, if the power and water is cut off, the refrigerator will be out of use. The materials we store now, it will break down soon, so we still have to go out to find supplies after all. Leonon's shelter is a good choice, but we can't do this for the time being. I don't know if you noticed it. People are basically members of the former Hungry Wolf Gang. The people who were killed are also members of the former Hungry Wolf Gang. Therefore, there is no possibility that they can cooperate with each other in acting. If we believe them credulously, eventually if you are betrayed like the Hungry Wolf Gang, I don't need to tell you how it will end up. So we need to wait, temporarily close the entrance and exit, and wait for the next time Anhe Wild Dog Gang rushes in. As long as it can be proved that Anhe Wild Dog Gang is indeed an enemy, it will not be too late for us to form an alliance with him. During this period of time, think more about it. If we form an alliance, what price we should pay is more appropriate. Quote. The man in the theme thinks more. The price? You mean we still have to give them something? Impossible. I don't agree. The thin man exploded as soon as he heard it, and objected on the spot. Yes, there are only 2 of them. Even if they unite, they should pay more. Women think so too. In this matter, the 2 of them stood together. The man in the main seat shook his head, a look of helplessness flashed across his face. You guys, the idea is too simple, you don't want to think about it. People rely on a wall to repel an invasion of the Wild Dog Gang. There is no shortage of guns and bullets. As long as our Lizard Gang still exists, the Wild Dog Gang still exists. Surely we will be the focus of the offense. In this case, why should people unite with us? Only, if we can draw the attention of the Wild Dog Gang, if our Lizard Gang is gone, they will be the only enemy of the Wild Dog Gang. That's what I said, but don't forget. After all, we are in the front. The big deal is that they can withdraw from the riverside area when the wild dogs attack us. They are few people and have a car. Evacuation is very convenient. Can we start anew elsewhere? Quote. And we don't need to pay too much, just show sincerity. If they are really hostile to the Wild Dog Gang, I believe they are willing to have more people to share the pressure. The leading man said slowly. This time no one had any objections. In addition, there is a piece of news that you may not know yet. The former shooting runner-up Philip has already joined Anne's shelter. Now they are more powerful, so don't think that we can have the advantage if we have more people. In fact, we really fight. If you get up, our side is not necessarily Anne's opponent. As soon as this statement came out, the other two were surprised. This time they finally had nothing to say and thought about it, and the two of them nodded helplessly and agreed. You have all thought about it lately, and then we will discuss in a few days how to show our sincerity. It is precisely by this opportunity to see if they are really hostile to the Wild Dog Gang. We want to unite, but I can't completely believe in Anne. You need to make preparations in advance that Anne may be a nail bought by the Wild Dog. The headed man gave the final word and set the tone for the united Ankai shelter. These, Ankai did not know. After Philip joined the sanctuary, the personnel of the sanctuary was expanded, and he was finally able to go out and collect resources more at ease. Wood is still the top priority, including cement. The cement needed to reinforce the shelter is huge, and he needs to make it himself after all. Lime and sand are needed to make cement, which is not difficult to solve, but there is no spiral cone, so you need to dig a little bit by yourself with a pickaxe, but the problem is not big. Arranged for Philip to guard the sanctuary. After leaving enough ammunition and guns, Ankai drove the car, carrying Mary, and went out of the city again, and began to collect construction resources. Chapter 51. The goal of going out this time is still to find wood, but also to find collection points for other resources. For example, all kinds of metals, stones, sand, lime, etc., which are equally important, don't need Ankai's strong professional knowledge. He only needs to constantly observe the surrounding ground. The system will give him some judgment methods, and then use tools just dig it out. The difficulty is 100 times easier than the real miners, and the harvest can be much greater. In fact, if you can, it's best to find a mine. Unfortunately, he has already asked Mary and Philip. The city they are currently in is after all a small town. Relying on a river that runs through the city, it has developed a good inland waterway transportation industry, but that's it. The mining resources here are not rich, the forest resources are not rich, and even the area of arable land is very small. There is no need to think about the ready-made mines. Ankai can only mine by itself in a systematic way. The destination was still the place where the logs were previously logged. Along the way, he stopped to check the ground several times. Through the mining interface of the system, he found a copper mine, an iron mine, and a lime mine. These mines were only in his line of sight. Then there will be a different light, which is invisible to others. Ankai tried several taps with an iron pickaxe. Basically, one tap can get about 5 pieces of ore, and every 3 or 4 taps, the ground will sink partly. The mining efficiency can be said to be quite good. And in the process of mining, sand will appear as a companion creature. This setting is quite good, at least you don't need Ankai to look for sand specifically. When we came to the logging site, we continued to cut down the trees. Next, making arrows for Philip also requires a lot of wood to make arrow shafts, and the furnaces also need wood as fuel. In short, wood is not used at any time. Too much. The logging process is relatively tedious, and Kai is responsible for sawing down the trees, and Mary is responsible for carrying them. In fact, wood can be directly included in the backpack, just like he did mining just now. But because it was large-scale logging, the backpack could not hold much, so Ankai actively shut down the operation of wood entering the backpack. Mary's physical strength is limited, and she needs to rest after moving, and Ankai will not put down the hand saw to help. The two cooperated with each other and soon filled most of the cart. Stop. Just when Ankai was about to continue sawing the tree, Mary's warning sound suddenly came from behind him. He immediately put down the hand saw and switched out the revolver. Following the sound, Ying Ying Chuo could see several figures in the forest in the distance. Who are you? Stop, or we will shoot. Ankai also shouted. The wild lack of shelter and concealment points, it is easy to be attacked by the enemy, so he dare not be careless. Don't get me wrong, we are the survivors of Elenta, we have no malice, please don't hurt us. A man walked out from behind a big tree, held his hands high, and said in a panic on his face. This person is wearing ragged clothes, his hands are dirty, his hair and beard are also bad, his cheeks are thin and his complexion is sallow, which shows that this person's condition is not good. Where are the others? Come out. And Kai didn't put down his gun, still aiming at the opponent fiercely. They are all my family. Come out, don't let people misunderstand. The man sighed and shouted behind him. Then a woman and 3 children walked out from behind the tree. Their situation is similar to that of men, especially the 3 children, who are a little too hungry to stand upright. The youngest is a boy with teardrops on his face. This gentleman, please help us, we have no food, no clothes, no water, no weapons, we have nothing, we can't live anymore. The man pleaded, his voice extremely earnest. Then how did you come from Elenta? And Kai asked. We originally had these things, but the food and water were consumed on the road. We also encountered a beast infected with the virus, and a battle broke out. During the battle, our weapons were lost. The family is also scattered, and my 2 children are also dead. I'm sorry for them. As the man talked, tears flowed down his eyes. The wife and children behind him also began to cry, especially the 2 younger children, crying loudly. And Kai smacked her lips, and she was quite unhappy in her heart. The main thing is to see the 3 children in ragged clothes, crying miserably, and feel uncomfortable. At the same time, he felt more difficult for the couple. It has been a while since I traveled into this world, but Kai has basically never seen a child. Because in such a world, it is difficult for even adults to survive, let alone children. Those who can feed their children in this environment are amazing people. And this couple, if they hadn't lied, they had supported 5 children before. The older one might have been able to follow them out to find life supplies, but the younger 2, no, look at these 3 children. It's not too big to go up, and it's almost impossible to go out to search for supplies. Seeing how hungry these people look thin and thin, what else can Kai say? Come here. He motioned the man with a pistol to approach. The man came over obediently. Turn around, Kai said. Then he briefly searched the man's body and made sure that he did not have any weapons on his body, and then he made him stand on the other side. Mary, you go over. For the remaining 4 people, the man's wife didn't say anything. The 3 children were also 2 women and 1 boy, so Kai must not have searched in the past. As a woman, Mary is very convenient at this time. The body search process was also stepped forward one by one. The others stood still and did not move. Kai had not let his guard down. As long as he felt something was wrong, he would shoot as soon as possible. Fortunately, these people seemed to be really honest people, with only some insignificant life materials and a small knife made of patches, and no weapons other than them. This gentleman, we really have no malice. Please give us something to eat. We can skip it, but children will starve their bodies if they don't eat. The man begged, Kai sighed and took out some food from the bag. He didn't want to admit that he had a heart attack. He just looked at these people, especially the 3 children, who were so hungry that they were almost out of hunger. When going out, Kai didn't bring much food, but he never brought only 1 day's rations every time. After all, no one knew whether there would be any accidents. For example, now, this is an accident. After getting the food, the man was so thankful that he had to kowtow to Kai. The 3 children were too hungry for a long time, and they were a little forgetful when they saw the food. The youngest one was choked because he ate too quickly. Kai quickly passed a few bottles of water, which made the choked. The child eased. Seeing his child finally eat something, the man smiled at ease. Kai looked at the man, and then handed over a box of cans and a bottle of water. You eat too, the children can't go hungry, you are their father, you have to take care of them, and you have to eat a full meal. The man shed tears again, thanked him, and swallowed. Kai did not rush to work, but found a place to sit down. After the man had finished eating, he called the man to his side and asked a few questions. The man's name was Carter Brown, his wife was Carol Brown, and his 3 children, 2 women and 1 boy, were named Ellie, Haley, and Alex, from the oldest to the youngest. Of course, they were all named Brown. They are from Elenta, the city where the brother of Jack, the former leader of the Hungry Wolf Gang, lives. Through talking with Kai, I learned that the situation in Alan Tower is much more serious than here. The city he is now in is called Bout, which is a relatively large existence among the surrounding dozens of cities. The size of Alan Tower is much smaller than Bout. Therefore, no federal army has ever cleaned up zombies. Whether the zombies there are both the quantity and the density are much higher than Bout's side. Because of this, there are almost no lone wolf survivors in Atlanta, because if you are alone, you will definitely not live long, and everyone must survive in a group. The Browns were originally a big family with more than 20 people, not only Carter and his family, but also their relatives. They gathered together to build a small shelter. Although life is difficult, it is definitely not that you can't live. It is a pity that Piff is not guilty of guilt. The shelter composed of their family, occupying a well as the foundation, was greeted by another large shelter and eventually led to murder. After paying the price of several relatives, they escaped as a family. As a result, they were attacked by 3 zombie beasts shortly after they had just walked out of Allen Tower. The result was that they were originally a family of children. After being completely dispersed, Carter tried his best to bring his family together, but even so, his eldest daughter and eldest son died in the mouth of the zombie beast. When he said this, Carter shed tears again on his face. Carter was originally an electrical engineer, and his wife, Carol, had worked as an accountant in a large company before getting married and had talents in records and statistics. And Kai thought for a while. If you have no other place to go, how about joining my shelter? I just lack people here. Of course, if you don't want to, I won't force you. No, I am willing, thank you, Mr. Ann, we are willing to join your shelter. Carter said with gratitude, and the Federation stood up and bowed to Kai, expressing his own gratitude. Enrolling the Browns into the sanctuary was not a hard attack. The reason is that there is a shortage of people in the shelter, and the Browns are chosen because they have 3 children. This point is very important. After all, children are always the weakness of their parents. Don't think Kai is very insidious. In fact, he can provide the Browns with a comfortable life environment and enough supplies for survival. What's more, he doesn't really want to use children as hostages. His purpose is just to do so. Maintain the loyalty of the Browns. As for how he judged that these 3 children must be the children of the Browns, isn't it very simple? You can tell by looking at it. As Brown agreed, 5 panels appeared in front of Kai. As the owner of the family, Carter Brown is 35 years old. He is an electrical engineer with very high electrical skills. His loyalty is loyal, which is second only to very loyal and is already relatively high. Carol Brown, 30 years old this year, was a kindergarten teacher before the end. He has good educational skills, as well as comfort skills, and his loyalty is loyalty. She is at the same first level as her husband. As for the 3 children, the skill level is relatively low. It is understandable. After all, they are still young, and the low skill level is not necessarily a bad thing. Especially for children, the low skill level shows that they are good at a certain aspect. The investment is not large enough. If Kai needs it, it can be adjusted at any time. As for loyalty, the 3 children are all more loyal first level than their parents. This can also be understood. After all, for loyalty, children may not understand the meaning well. The Browns are different. They are grown-ups. They have seen all kinds of things in society. They have also experienced the hardships after the end of the day. Now they have finally found a place that is willing to accept them, and Kai still looks very good. For a kind person, such a place is too hard to find. With gratitude, it is reasonable to get the second-level loyalty evaluation. Now that there are a few more people, Kai can no longer collect resources. It is not a complicated reason. The main reason is that the Jeep only has 2 seats. Now the back of the car also needs to be seated, so naturally it can't be full. Considering that the children are still young, the co-pilot gave 3 children. The oldest Ellie Brown sat in the seat, holding own little brother and little sister, and the Brown couple and Mary sat down on the wood behind. And Kai was responsible for driving and drove all the way to the direction of the shelter. With a few more people, the food pressure becomes ascension again. Although it is possible to go out to collect supplies, some precautionary work can already be done. And Kai first sent the Browns back to the shelter, and distributed weapons and ammunition to Carter and Carol. After furthering the defense of the Ascension shelter, he took Mary back to the outskirts again. This time, he needed to collect some clay. Clay is also a companion creature of various mineral veins, and some can be excavated by the way when collecting ore. He wants to make something sustainable. Open black lens bracket planting boxes, buildings, can be used to grow crops and herbs. Materials needed. Wood 4, clay 2. Close black lens bracket. The planting box is one of the sustainable equipment provided by the system. The manufactured planting box has an area of only 1 square meter. Fortunately, it requires very few materials. There is no shortage of wood or the like, but there is not enough clay. Such a planting box has different planting densities depending on what is planted. And this is only the lowest level planting box. There are also large planting boxes, advanced planting boxes, eutrophic planting boxes, and so on. The higher the level, the more crops are planted, and the output and quality of the crops will follow ascension. In addition, if he wants to plant, he needs at least the farmer skill. The minimum is level 1, and he can plant some plants that are better to feed. For example, potatoes, such as pumpkins, such as wheat, etc., such as fruits and herbs, you need a higher level of farmer skills to achieve. Of course, there is no need to upgrade to such a high level at the moment, because he is not short of medicine for the time being. In fact, food is not necessary, but it is always right to prepare in advance. After all, he currently does not know how long it will take to grow crops to mature. In the game time is generally 1 to 2 days, but at most 4 or 5 days to mature. In reality, it is more than an hour, but it is not playing games now, so even if it takes several months to mature, it is normal. Yes, if you make preparations in advance, even if something happens again, you won't be in a hurry. Fortunately, the area of the shelter is large enough, and Enkai made 40 planting boxes in one go. At this time, you can see the benefits of more people. The main fighting force of the shelter is himself, Mary and Philip. Now with Carter, it is enough for the time being. Carol, Ari, and others are not very effective in fighting, but they are enough to take care of the plants, and they do not need to do too complicated things, as long as they water on time every day and remove weeds by the way. In addition, Enkai did not dare to put all the planting boxes in the courtyard. To be honest, the outer wall of the shelter was not invincible, and the possibility of being breached was not ruled out. So he only put 10 planting boxes in the yard with planting inside. He searched for 40 carrot seeds, each planting box can plant 4. He placed the other 30 planting boxes on the roof of the workshop. The tops were flat and wide, and the terrain was high. If you look at them from below, you can't see those planting boxes. Of the 30 planting boxes, 10 are used for planting potatoes. Each planting box can plant 3 potato seedlings, making a total of 30 potato seedlings. There are 5 planting boxes for planting pumpkins, and there are also 3 pumpkins per box. The last 15 are all used to grow wheat. Enkai is not without other seeds, but on the one hand, considering his skill level, it is the easiest to grow these crops. Secondly, the crops he chose are all crops with large yields and relatively comprehensive nutrition. Even if there is a real shortage of food one day, these crops can all be used as food. When Enkai put down the planting boxes one by one, Philip and the Brown family opened their eyes in surprise. They are all from the city, and they basically don't know anything about farming. And it has been so long since the end, they have never heard of anyone planting anything. Of course, this is probably because they are ignorant. Although farming skills are not widely spread in modern society, they are not spread all over the world. Few people besides the real farmers will know it. It's also normal. For crops like potatoes and radishes, which are hard-skinned, it is not much more difficult to plant than flowers. Besides, even if there are people who have such abilities, will they be promoted all over the world? Impossible. No one would be so stupid. Nowadays, there are indeed a lot of supplies that can be found. As long as you are careful, it is not difficult to survive. If there is no burden, you can even live very well. However, as long as you go out to search, you will inevitably encounter danger. If you can grow your own land at home, as long as there is enough water source, the cycle can be almost infinite. There is no need to go out to take risks, and there is no need to worry about being starved to death. If anyone has such a skill and is known by outsiders, what will happen? The lucky ones are sought after, and the unlucky ones will be swallowed by those large shelters and become tools for farming. So even if someone has such skills, they won't be hyped. Isn't it okay to cultivate quietly by yourself? Remember, everyone must be tight-lipped. The news that we are sheltering all the crops must not be known to others. Anne, it's best to move these 10 planting boxes to places where others can't notice. Philip said in a deep voice. And Kai thought for a while, turned on the system, and found something called sunlight. Open black lens bracket sunlights, buildings, can provide the sunlight necessary for plants to grow indoors. Production materials. Electrical parts 5, metal 10, glass 3. Note, the layout density is at least 1 lamp per square meter and a maximum of 5 lamps. Close black lens bracket. Since it is risky to be placed outside, it can be completely transferred indoors, as long as ventilation and light are ensured. The ventilation is well solved, and the light can be replaced by sun lights. The difficulty of making sun lamps is not high. The main problem is glass. Each piece of glass requires 5 units of sand to make. Sand is no longer a rare material for Enkai today, so 40 planting pots. If so, he can completely make 200 sun lamps in one go, and directly fill up the number of sun lamps. It's just that this thing needs electricity. If there is only one generator, he still doesn't know whether it is enough or not. But it is worth a try, and he can also put part of the planting boxes in the workshop. There are windows around the workshop, which can satisfy a certain amount of light. They did what they said. They completely emptied the warehouse that originally belonged to the pharmaceutical factory. The warehouse had been searched many times before. There were not many useful things in it. Almost all the medicines were taken away, and only extremely a few lucky ones were left out. After emptied the warehouse, Enkai moved all 40 planting boxes in, and then began to make solar lamps. Burning sand, melting metal, and combining electrical parts. Because it is a relatively advanced building, the experience provided is very rich. He has only made more than 30 lights, and he broke through again. This time, he gave the skills to Shooting Champion, skill in perception. Shooting Champion can effectively ascension shooting accuracy and firearm stability, and Kai has never liked close combat. When he just crossed over, there is no way to fight zombies close, as his firearms and equipment gradually enriched, as well as the appearance of the silencer, he began to focus on long-range attacks, and now he has completely given up close combat. Why use a knife if you can use a firearm? Doesn't it fragrant with one shot? Combat skills have different focuses. Strength mainly ascension attack power and attack speed, agility ascension is flexibility and action moves, perception ascension long-range attack and search concealment ability, physical strength ascension endurance and anti-strike ability, wisdom ascension weapon equipment and various plugins. If you take the battle route, in fact, the 5 major aspects are indispensable, especially the wisdom aspect. Weapons picked up outside will be damaged and the bullets will be insufficient. At this time, you need to open black lens bracket wisdom came to help. Therefore, there is no future for taking the battle route in the early stage, because several times until now, even if Enkai can wash all his skill points back and fight, he may not be able to form a mature combat system. On the contrary, it is because of the main added wisdom. Although his combat system is far from perfect, his combat effectiveness is not weak. Now that the wisdom master has enough skill points, he has passed the most difficult period of the early stage, so now he can finally add some combat skills to strengthen himself. Continue to do business. The existence of the sun is actually a kind of protection for system users. Planting outside is easy to be noticed by people, and considering other risk factors that may exist, indoor planting is the best choice. Plants need sunlight. Before crossing, Enkai knew that many tools can provide sunlight for indoor planting. After arriving in this world, he judged that the level of technology in this world should be sufficient, but where to find related equipment is a problem, far less convenient than system manufacturing. The huge warehouse was emptied and used as a planting area. Enkai installed the sunlights one by one, connected the wires, started the generator, and the whole planting house looked like daylight as the light came down. Wow, is this really useful? In the future, don't you have to worry about running out of food anymore? The 3 children jumped excitedly. Compared with adults, children's ability to resist hunger is worse. Although the Browns have provided food to the 3 children as much as possible along the way, the little ones are still hungry enough and finally have a deeper understanding of food. Now that the planting house is officially opened, it means that there will be a steady stream of food in the future. The 3 little guys who are already starving are only happy and excited at this moment. I want to see the seeds in the planting box germinate and grow right now. Bloom and bear fruit. The work of the planting house came to an end and Ankai continued to strengthen the shelter. With the help of the Browns, the strengthening work of the shelter took off. In just 5 days, he strengthened all the places he could touch. This kind of defense force, even if the opponent uses RPG, it is difficult to collapse the walls and roof in a short time. The safety factor of the entire shelter is more than a little bit. At this point, Ankai is going to continue to search with Mary in the southern district. The supplies there are very rich. Now the shelter has 5 more mouths to eat. Although the planting area has been established and the seeds are growing fast, according to the system prompts, these plants will take 1 month to grow. But the food in the shelter can't last for a month, so going out to search has become a necessary work. Philip continued to stay in the shelter, responsible for security and training on the other. The Brown family may have some fighting power from Carter, but it is at the level of ordinary people. Carol and the 3 children have almost no fighting power, which requires training. This is not a peaceful time. It does not mean that you can get a good life if you have knowledge and culture. If the scale of the shelter continues to expand in the future, there may be different divisions between full-time construction and production and full-time combat security, but you definitely can't do this now. Everyone is a possible combat power, and Ankai will not waste it casually. When I drove out, a figure blocked the way. Is it Mr. An? Just after Ankai stopped, Mary raised her muzzle, and the other party took the initiative to speak. I'm from the Lizard Gang. I want to discuss something with Mr. N. Don't worry, I don't have any bad intentions. The opponent raised his hands, indicating that he had no weapons. Be careful around. Ankai thought for a while and told Mary. Mary nodded, her big eyes like searchlights, constantly scanning her surroundings. Ankai opened the door and got out of the car and came to the person who was blocking the road. Are you from the Lizard? Yes, this is my tattoo. This is a very young man with short, dry hair and looks very energetic. He has a tattoo on his neck, the tail of a lizard, just sticking out of the collar. This is the representation of the Lizard Gang. All members of the Lizard Gang will tattoo a lizard on their body. In fact, they shouldn't be called the Lizard Gang. It's almost the same as the Crawling Gang, because the Lizard Gang's tattoos are not necessarily all lizards in the literal sense. They are similar creatures. In fact, they are all reptiles. They are nothing more than different sizes. What did you stop me trying to say? For the Lizard Gang, Ankai has no ill feelings. Although he had strayed into the opponent's territory and was expelled by the opponent before, he did not shoot at the time, which is a giving face behavior. In contrast, the Lizard Gang is also the most kind of the 3 gangs in the past. They generally do not slaughter innocent survivors casually, and often only take action after a conflict. Generally, when people from the Lizard Gang come out to search for supplies, and install them with a single survivor, as long as the survivor is willing to hand over the supplies, the people from the Lizard Gang will not hurt him. On the contrary, it is hard to say, but compared to the Wild Dog Gang, even this is much stronger. Of course, if there is no ill feeling, it does not mean that Ankai has a good feeling for the Lizard Gang. If it's just an ordinary shelter, it doesn't matter, but Ankai doesn't like it too much for gangs or something. I came here under the order of our leader. We hope to unite with you, Mr. N, to deal with the Wild Dog Gang. Mr. N's shelter was attacked by the Wild Dog Gang before, please believe me, the Wild Dog Gang. It's definitely not the case. Although they have lost several people, they are all members of the Hungry Wolf Gang. The Wild Dog Gang itself has not lost much, and we have received news that the Wild Dog Gang is recruiting wildly these past 2 days. People, so they are very likely to take action against us in the near future. If our 2 families are separated, no one will be an opponent of the Wild Dog Gang. But if our 2 can join forces, they will not only be able to withstand the Wild Dog Gang's attacks, but may even counterattack. Go back. The man said earnestly. For them, the Wild Dog Gang is indeed a great threat. In fact, Ankai's shelter is also a threat to the Lizard Gang, but in comparison, the Wild Dog Gang is even better. However, for Ankai, the Wild Dog Gang is not so scary. He admits that the wild dogs help many people and threats are definitely there, but unless the wild dogs find a powerful lethal weapon that can destroy the wall of the shelter, if they only rely on firearms to shoot at each other, they are completely worthy of each other. Now there are 5 new people in the shelter. Yes, 3 children are basically incompetent, but what about 2 adults? Apart from anything else, you can always shoot when you pick up a gun. Enkai does not need their marksmanship to be accurate, as long as they can provide firepower support and can create a firepower net to suppress the enemy, this is enough. So is it useful to form an alliance? There are drops, but not as big as expected. If you join forces, what can you give me? Enkai asked back. What? The man was a little confused by what he said, and looked at Enkai blankly, as if he didn't expect Enkai to say that. It's okay to join forces, but what can you give me? Food, fuel, medicine, or other supplies. Enkai said of course. He is not afraid of the Wild Dog Gang, not to mention the Lizard Gang. Now it is the other party who begs himself to join forces, so he has the initiative. Since the initiative is in hand, it would be too stupid not to get some benefits. As for whether this would destroy the possibility of the 2 sides joining forces, so that the Wild Dog Gang would defeat them one by one, Enkai was not worried about this issue. Again, unless the Wild Dog Gang has a powerful weapon that can break through the sanctuary is invincible. And even if the shelter is broken, doesn't Enkai know how to run? There are few people on his side, it is easy to evacuate, and there is a system and there is no place to survive in the future, so his innate is standing in an invincible place, there is no need to join forces with the Lizard Gang. Now that the other party has proposed it, he is not going to reject it directly, but to see if he can get some benefits. If you can, it doesn't matter if you join forces once. Well, these are my requirements. If you want to join hands, show your sincerity, don't just say it, it's useless. You can pass my thoughts back, and I'll wait for your good news. After speaking, Enkai turned into the car and walked away. Only the man stood there, eating his exhaust, and the wind was messy. Enkai's goal today is a hotel. In order to make solar lamps, he used up all the electrical parts he had stored for so long, which made him eager to replenish the inventory. Electrical parts are related to the manufacture and maintenance of various electrical equipment, so they are one of the indispensable materials for the late stage of the system. There are a lot of electrical equipment in the hotel, as well as a lot of bedding fabrics, which are what Enkai currently needs most. Of course, there is food, and more water collectors and water purifiers need to be made, otherwise it will not be able to meet the needs of the shelter. So the task is still very difficult, and he still needs to work harder. On the other side, the Wild Dogs started a new round of recruitment plans. In fact, there are still a lot of people who want to join the Wild Dog Gang. Although the social elites and most ordinary people do not have a good view of the gang, the vast majority of people, even in the Doomsday world, as long as they can live if you have to go on, you don't want to join a gang to make a living. But if some people are unwilling to join, naturally others are willing to join. Although the gang has a bad reputation, it has many people and abundant supplies. Even if it is going out to search for supplies, it is not a person or 2 people, but at least 4 to 6 people. This guarantees safety to a large extent. Therefore, after the Wild Dog Gang released the news, it recruited more than 50 people in just 2 days. The total number of the entire gang has approached the 100-member mark. This is definitely a big number in the Riverside area. The Wild Dog Gang in the past did not recruit people, but due to 2 reasons, the number of people has been unable to increase. One is the threat of the Hungry Wolf Gang. Among the 3 major gangs at the time, the Lizard Gang was located in the western zone, separated from the eastern zone by a central area, and because it had always kept itself safe, the Hungry Wolf Gang hardly targeted the Lizard Gang. But the Wild Dog Gang is different. It is just under the eyelids of the Hungry Wolf Gang. Of course, the Hungry Wolf Gang can't take the field of vision to make the Dog Gang bigger and stronger. Gang warned that the Wild Dog Gang was still concerned about the strength of the Hungry Wolf Gang, so it has not dared to expand on a large scale. At the same time, because the entire gang was trapped at the highway junction and the abundance of supplies was far less than it is now, it was impossible to recruit too many people, otherwise everyone would be hungry. These problems are not considered problems now. The Hungry Wolf Gang has disappeared, and the entire Eastern District is owned by the Wild Dog Gang. Feeding 100 people with the power of one district is almost the same as playing. The ambition to unify the riverside area, and even the entire city, finally could no longer be restrained from growing up. It happens that Ankai's shelter and the lizard gang are the stumbling blocks in front of them. In order to kick these two stones away, the wild dog gang must also expand. There are hundreds of people, which is not the current limit of the wild dog gang. With their material reserves, they can easily feed within 300 people. And these news are unknown to Enkai. The man blocking the way passed Enkai's answer back, and the result aroused the anger of the lizard gang's senior management. Never agree. Too greedy. Wishful thinking. In any case, the lizard gang, as one of the three former gangs, cannot accept Enkai's blackmail in any case. In fact, in their initial thoughts, the two parties joined forces to prepare Enkai to provide them with some weapons and equipment. Wherever they thought about giving them something to Enkai, the gap is too big, so they absolutely cannot acceptable, the kind that you can't even talk about. Maybe they are short of food. If you use food for weapons, I don't know if it's possible. Someone proposed this idea. Although it was also opposed by some people felt that this business could be done. We have fewer people now, and there is too much food to eat. I am afraid that some of it will need to be thrown away after a while. If it can be used to replace weapons, it would be a good choice. The only problem is that it doesn't sound good to say it out. After all, they are one of the three big gangs, but they have to deal with a shelter with only 3 people. Invisibly, they have lost their identities. Yes, they didn't know that Ankai's shelter had 5 new people. Of course, even if they knew it, they wouldn't care. After all, how many of the so-called 5 people could serve as combat effectiveness? Now the wild dog gang is their greatest enemy, so in order to resist the attack of the wild dog gang, the alliance must go on, and this must not be shaken. Promise him, give him food, but remember, he wants to exchange it with weapons. The leader of the lizard gang finalized this so-called alliance plan. It seems to him that as long as you give Enkai something casually, Enkai will not refuse him. It can be said to be full of confidence. The two gangs acted separately. Enkai led Mary to start another cleanup. The number of zombies in the hotel he chose is no less than the previous bar, but the terrain of the hotel is more beneficial to him, and as the number of shots shot by Mary increases, the marksmanship gradually increases, at least there will be no 4. 5 shots can kill a zombie. This time Enkai also brought an extra pistol and 3 magazines, while Mary brought an extra spray gun. There are more weapons and more bullets, the speed of cleaning zombies is faster, and the whole process is more stable. The only problem is that the spray can't install a silencer, but fortunately, there are fewer zombies wandering here in the southern district, and most of the zombies are shrunk into rooms. And this time, Enkai finally saw the so-called explosive zombies. Other places are the same as ordinary zombies. The only difference is that the belly of the exploding zombies is larger, and it is bulging like a woman who is 10 months pregnant. It also walks slowly, swaying. After discovering the zombie, Enkai immediately took Mary back, and after retreating to a place he thought was safe, he cut out the rifle and aimed a shot at the belly of the exploding zombie. Boom! The power of no less than a regular bomb exploded in a narrow corridor. Enkai and Mary had already found a hiding place in advance, so they were not swept by the power of the explosion. After they left the hiding place again, they were shocked to find that the floor of the hotel had been completely blown up, and a huge hole appeared on the ground of the 3rd floor where they were located, leading directly to the 2nd floor. The walls on both sides had also collapsed, and the densely packed zombies in the passage before were all killed directly. Enkai took a look at the experience bar, and the increase was gratifying. This kind of zombies killed by the explosion actually gave Enkai the experience, which is really good. There were more than 10 explosive zombies in the hotel, and Enkai succeeded in shooting them one by one. In the end, although the interior of the building was completely damaged, it saved him a lot of bullets and energy. Of course, the electrical appliances were also damaged. Phew. Fortunately, the hotel kitchen was not affected, and they still found a lot of food. We only found 2 small pistols, which is different from the bar here, and does not need too many weapons to maintain the scene. Electrical appliances are really big heads. Many air conditioners, refrigerators, washing machines, etc. have been found, as well as a variety of small household appliances. Although a lot of them have been blown up, many more are unharmed. Enkai moved all of these back, and left the ones that were needed, and split all the ones that were not needed. He is too lazy to move things like wood, stone and metal. If he really needs it, he can go to the wild. It is efficient and fast, and it is much more convenient than collecting it in the city. In addition, he has another big gain, that is, in the underground garage of the hotel, he found another usable car. This is a van, which is very convenient for both pulling people and carrying goods. The car is in very good condition, but there is not too much gasoline, only one mouthful is left. It is estimated that it will break down if it can't be driven far. With an attitude of trying, Kai drove the van to the door of the shelter before stopping. After Carter got the news, he immediately ran out with the oil drum to refuel the van. With the second car, they can load more things, and if they need to evacuate, one more car will make it more convenient. If the van is thrown by Kai to Philip, although the Brown family's loyalty is high enough, even higher than Philip, in fact, as long as they are within the loyalty range, they will not betray. The difference is whether they will. In Kai's order is regarded as the first order. Like Mary, as long as Kai orders, she will execute it without compromise, except, sell, her. When the Browns came to the Browns, the possibility of disobeying the order was higher. Philip was a higher level, but at most he was just unwilling to execute the order. They would not actively sell the shelter. This is the effect of loyalty. So it doesn't matter if you give the key to anyone. Kai doesn't worry that the person who gets the key will sneak away. The reason for giving it to Philip is just because Philip joined the shelter earlier than the Browns. As long as one step earlier, it's early. There must be a certain difference. When there is another car, the key can be given to Carter. In addition, in the hotel, Kai also found several DVD players and game consoles. Now that there is electricity, a TV, and a DVD player and game console, he can finally feel the entertainment of this world. That night, he called the 3 children of Brown's family to join Mary. Several people came to the recreation room and played games for a night and watched a movie for the night. Similar to the development of entertainment on the earth, games are several genres that he is familiar with, and movies are similar. In the next few days, Kai collected supplies everywhere, and he lost his home day by day. 2 vehicles were dispatched at the same time, and various materials and resources continued to gather in the shelter. On this day, Kai just got up, and Philip found him. Actively attack the wild dog gang. Philip's proposal did not surprise Kai. In fact, he had this plan a long time ago. He has always only been a thief in 1,000 days. There is no reason for 1,000 days to guard against a thief. Since he has already been with a wild dog, waiting for the other party to call the door is the most stupid. Therefore, after receiving the Browns, Kai planned to attack the Dingo gang. Part of his purpose of collecting electrical parts in a plantation was to prepare for attacking the wild dog gang. Because there is a weapon that requires electrical parts to make. Open black lens bracket remote control bombs, weapons, powerful, and can be used for long-range fixed-point attacks against clustered enemies. Materials needed. Gunpowder 5, metal 2, electrical parts 2 close black lens bracket. This is the big gift Kai prepared for the wild dogs. In fact, from the very beginning, Kai was not prepared to be passively beaten, but he hoped to be more prepared and start his hand when he had more cards. But Philip's proposal made him think about it. It's definitely right to prepare more, but the people of the wild dog gang are not stupid. When he is preparing, they are also preparing, just as there have been countless arms races on the earth. There is no end to preparation, knowing that one party can't help it or can't continue, war will come after all. At this point, there is no possibility of peace between them and the wild dog gang, and there must be a victory or defeat. He felt that he was not prepared enough, and the wild dog gang must also think so. But the difference between the two sides is that he has a large amount of munitions here, which can guarantee the formation of a crushing situation in firepower. Although on the defensive end, Kai is definitely at a disadvantage, because until now, only 5 people can play on his side. Among them, the strength of the Carter Browns is still worrying. But what about changing the angle? If Kai and the others are placed on the offensive end, fewer people means easy transfer and evacuation. They can completely fight guerrilla warfare with the wild dog gang, relying on strong firepower to support, they can easily wipe out the others' vital forces. Thinking about this, Kai knew that he should change his strategy in time and could not continue to be passive. Instead, he should take the initiative to attack. The monitoring equipment he had obtained before was used in the shelter, and now it should be used even more. Before reaching the 5th level of the engineer, he could not make the surveillance equipment himself, but only 2 trips to the southern district brought him hundreds of cameras and 2 complete sets of equipment, one for the shelter itself. One set is used right on the battlefield. Philip, you go with me. Kai did not take Mary this time. In this regard, Mary could not provide him much help, far less useful than Philip. And this time when they went out, Kai and the others did not drive, but packed all the equipment in their backpacks and went into battle lightly. Kai held his crossbow and Philip carried his longbow. The two traveled by the moonlight, and did not disturb anyone. Be careful, Carol looked at them worriedly. Kai turned his head and gave a thumbs up to the remaining 6 people in the shelter, and then disappeared into the night with Philip. Their first stop was the gate of the Wild Dog Gang. Previously, the headquarters of the Wild Dog Gang was near the highway intersection, but with the destruction of the Hungry Wolf Gang, the Wild Dog Gang also moved its headquarters to the former site of the Wild Dog Gang in the eastern storage area. Here, containers are used as walls to form a huge fortress. There are headlights on the fortress, shining on the surrounding environment all the time, ensuring that no one can approach silently. Obviously, the Wild Dog Gang also has generators and gasoline. Of course, this is also normal. It's impossible for such a big gang to have none of this. Kai and Philip came to the vicinity of the Wild Dog Gang, first observed the environment around the Wild Dog Gang, determined the roads where the Wild Dog Gang members went out, and then they came to the nearest tall building, and Kai was responsible for laying the line. Philip lifted himself out of the roof and installed a camera in the air. In fact, this work should be done by Carter. After all, Carter is an electrical engineer. Although the camera equipment also involves software issues, it is clear that Carter is more professional than Kai. Persevering Carter is just an ordinary person. He must not be able to stand him hanging outside in this way, so he can only come by Philip. As for Mary, it is of course possible to do this job, but the problem is that they must ensure absolute silence this time when they go out. Even if they encounter enemies or zombies, it is best to eliminate them in a silent manner. Shooting is impossible, and close combat is too dangerous, and the shelter needs a number of combatants to guard, so Mary can only stay at home. Of course, it doesn't matter. In fact, any one of them can come out. Kai directly ordered this work, and Mary didn't feel any dissatisfaction. The installation of the first camera was completed quickly. They did not rush to try, but pulled the line far away and began to install cameras in other directions. From the nest of the Wild Dog Gang, if you are going out to search for supplies, there are 4 roads to go. Each road, Kai has installed 10 cameras, which are located in different locations and have their own concealed. Finding a part of it will not cause the signal to be completely lost. 40 cameras, the line was finally concentrated in a basement. Here is the cellar of an ordinary house. Kai also dug more than 10 meters above the original foundation, and installed several open hatches to ensure that isolate the sound of the generator, and even if an enemy invades, it will definitely not be able to attack in a short time. Of course, another escape route is also prepared. Kai dug a dozen meters horizontally, and finally opened a back road in another house across the street. Philip was left here, along with an intercom. This is also found by Kai during the search process. It is basically not used in normal times, but it is used now. It took a long time to debug the equipment. 3 cameras found that there was no signal during the debugging. Philip also went out and rechecked one side. After confirming that there was no problem at all, the two met again in the basement. Notify me as soon as there is news, I am ready to attack at any time. Kai told Philip, evacuate in time if you are in danger. All these things can be discarded. Don't let yourself fall into danger. Our goal is to eliminate the vitality of the Wild Dog Gang, not to sink ourselves into it. Don't worry, I know what to do, Philip said with a smile. Behind him are boxes of food and clean water, and he is ready to fight a protracted battle here. All this last night, Kai quietly left. Philip sat in front of the display and began to observe the movement of the Wild Dog Gang. For the next 2 days, the Wild Dog Gang remained silent, and Enkai was not in a hurry, and continued to renovate the shelter step by step. The reinforcement has now come to an end, and his first task now is to remove all the large machinery in the pharmaceutical factory that he does not use. This kind of large-scale production equipment can provide a large number of mechanical parts. Of course, there are also some electrical parts. He was not willing to dismantle all of them before. The main reason is that if he can find relevant talents, use this large-scale equipment to produce medicines, the effect is estimated to be better than I made it much faster by myself. And even if the system was powerful, a small chemical station would definitely not be able to compare with this kind of large-scale equipment in terms of output. But now when I think about it, do I really need so many drugs? In fact, enough is enough. If you do too much, you won't be able to take it away at the critical moment and you can't bear to throw it away, which will torture people instead. Putting these large-scale equipment here may not be necessary for you. If you accidentally get it by the enemy, it will be more troublesome. It's better to just take it down. At present, Enkai has been able to make electrical equipment. The engineer unlocked at the 5th level is a smart device. In other words, as long as it is not a device that requires microcomputer control, he can now make it. Of course, except for large vehicles, but he can already make motorcycles. These dismantled mechanical parts are just right for making motorcycles. Just do it. Enkai started to dismantle the equipment of the pharmaceutical factory, and smelt iron ingots frantically over the furnace to prepare the necessary parts for motorcycles. There are actually many necessary parts for motorcycles, but under the system planning, they are mainly divided into 3 categories. They are the frame, the transmission system, and the outer shell of the motorcycle. The materials that need to be used are also very complex. From metal to rubber, from rubber to wood, from wood to glass, it can be said that a motorcycle is actually a demonstration of an entire industrial system. Although it may not be high-end, it is definitely comprehensive enough. If Enkai was really asked to study and make a motorcycle by himself, he would not be able to make it for the rest of his life. If nothing else, an engine would kill him. But with the help of the system, he doesn't need to understand the knowledge inside. As long as his level is enough and the materials are enough, he can make it. The first thing to complete is the motorcycle frame, which requires 200 iron ingots, and is the only component that only requires one material. This consumption is really not small. Even if Enkai is in charge of the system, it feels a bit difficult to do it. The second part is the transmission system, which is mainly composed of engines, chains, bearings, and tires. It needs more iron ingots, which is 350 pieces. It also needs 50 rubbers, 50 mechanical parts and 5 electrical parts. Although Enkai also doesn't know how these things can form a complete transmission system, this does not prevent him from making it. The final shell system is arguably the most complicated. Including the fuel tank, 320 iron ingots, 30 rubber, 20 wood, 5 glass, 50 plastics are used. In short, the materials used are only comprehensive. This is still the first time. Finally, when the motorcycle was finished, everyone else was stunned. The appearance of this motorcycle is very similar to the exclusive motorcycle of a certain camp in an online game that Enkai once played on Earth. The body is pure black, the front and rear are spiked, and the tires are also iron shell cover. Even if someone wants to blow a tire with a gun, it is completely impossible to do. The weight of this car is exaggerated. If it is not supported by a bracket, one person cannot hold it. As the maker of motorcycles, Enkai naturally has the first right to drive. It also has a patch-mounted armor and a metal-clad helmet. They are neatly dressed. Enkai is turning on the engine and twisting the handle. In a roar, he rushed out of the shelter and rushed to the group of zombies nearest to him. The motorcycle swiftly slammed into a group of zombies in the distance. Said to be a group, in fact there are only 5 zombies. When Enkai saw the sharp thorns on the motorcycle, he couldn't help but want to hit the zombies with the car. There was no reason. This kind of thought seemed to appear in his brain out of thin air. The speed of the motorcycle is as fast as possible, and it is about 80 steps visually. The zombies are getting closer. At the moment when he was about to hit, Enkai's muscles were tense, and his heart raised his throat, ready to roll over. Fortunately, this motorcycle has a heavy weight and a very stable center of gravity. In addition, the front of the motorcycle is sloping. The moment it hits the zombies, the oncoming zombies are cut into several sections by a sharp knife, and then they are attached to the slope of the front. And Kai's head flew directly into the sky. Just like bowling, a motorcycle is a ball, and zombies are bottles. In an instant, the group of zombies were knocked down and out. Cool. The motorcycle rushed out several tens of meters before stopping. And Kai stopped the car, took off his helmet, and couldn't help shouting. The feeling of hitting a zombie with a car is completely different from the feeling of slashing with a knife or shooting with a gun. The impact of flesh and blood is absolutely exciting. And Kai is a person who likes to be quiet, but as a man, there is also blood chi in his bones. He hasn't driven a zombies before, but the protection of ordinary cars is obviously not enough to break the zombies to pieces, and if they hit the zombies, the car will also be damaged, so he still doesn't want to hit him if he can't hit him. This motorcycle is different. It is covered with a layer of pure iron armor, which is hard enough. And the feeling of experiencing flesh and blood at close range is far from what a car can match. So in a nutshell, hitting a zombie with a motorcycle is much better than hitting a car with a car. Back to the sanctuary on their motorcycles, a crowd of people gathered around and watched the motorcycles in surprise. Carol kicked a bucket of water and cleaned the motorcycle before the 3 children were allowed to touch the body by 1,000. This car will be regarded as a bus in our shelter in the future. Anyone can ride it, but we need to apply in advance, except under 18 years old. And Kai added, whispering sound. The 3 little guys pouted beside. If you think about it, you can know that once such a big heavy motorcycle falls over, adult and strong men can't support it, and children have poor control ability. What if you don't believe that it is crushed by the motorcycle? Carter and Carol agreed with this decision with both hands. Anne, can you hear? Can you hear? The Wild Dog Gang is dispatched. 4 motorcycles, 4 bicycles, a total of 12 people, have entered the 8th block. Repeat, have entered the 8th block. Philip's voice suddenly sounded from the walkie-talkie hanging on Kai's chest. It was about the Wild Dog Gang. Finally out. After a short lag, Kai immediately beamed with joy. He has been waiting for the Wild Dog Gang for several days, but the Wild Dog Gang has not moved, and he is a little anxious. He is not afraid that wild dogs will help many people, but he is afraid that wild dogs will not be able to help. The scale of 100 people is still resistant to him, but if there are more people, such as 300 or 500, then Ankai and the others can't deal with it. The Wild Dog Gang definitely has the ability to ascension the population to that level, so before that, he must find a way to get rid of the Wild Dog Gang. Remote-controlled bombs are useful, but they are not offensive weapons. On the contrary, they are defensive weapons. Ankai has quietly buried the bombs on the only way to the shelter for the Wild Dog Gang, but the power of the bombs is also limited. Yes, so after all, we still can't give the Wild Dog Gang a chance to continue to grow. Before the Wild Dog Gang had been unable to shrink, even if Ankai was in a hurry, it was useless and could only wait. Now that the Wild Dog Gang is finally dispatched, no matter what their goal is, this is an opportunity for Ankai. Carter, Carol, you take the children to take care of the house. Mary, let's go. Ankai said he was going to drive. Carter suddenly said, Anne, I want to go with you too. When he said this, Carter's face was a bit expectant and a bit nervous. Ankai froze for a moment, and immediately understood Carter's thoughts. He probably felt that he had joined the asylum for a long time, and he couldn't help with anything, so he was a little embarrassed. It's okay, Carter. The shelter is also very important. You and Carol take the children to guard it. Protecting our shelter is more important than anything else. But, I also hope to help you eliminate the enemy. If something happens to you, we may not be able to resist the Wild Dog Gang. Carter said with a worried look. It turned out to be because of this. Ankai chuckled and shook his head. Don't worry about us. The Dingo Gang has only dispatched 12 people, which is not enough for us to warm up. Then, this time you will take care of the house, and you can go with me next time. Ankai made a compromise decision. He can't take Carter to death. After all, his training time is short, and his abilities in all aspects are definitely not comparable to Mary. With Mary, even in a crisis situation, Mary can save herself, but Carter is different. The family joins the shelter, and he can't let Carter get injured or even die so quickly. But at the same time, he can't beat Carter's enthusiasm. Okay. Hearing that he could act with him next time, Carter's eyes lit up again. Carol listened to their conversation by the side. There are worries and comforts on the face, the only thing not is fear and rejection. In fact, everyone understands how important such a shelter with food, drink and control is powerful. After learning that the shelter is in conflict with the wild dog gang, the Browns were also worried, but after all, they decided to go to the shelter. Coexist and die. Because even if they leave now, it will be extremely difficult to survive, let alone with 3 children. If you stay in the shelter, you may die in battle, or you may live. If they die, there is no need to worry about the children's future. Although they have not had much contact with Ankai, they can feel that if they have an accident, Ankai will take good care of their children. This saves you from worries, and has a more sense of belonging and identification with the shelter. There was also a situation in which Carter took the initiative to request that he wanted to act together. This shows that Carter has regarded the shelter as his own home, and is willing to pay a certain amount of sacrifice for the safety of his home. Soothing Carter and letting them guard their homes, Ankai took Mary to the 8th block. This block number was determined by Ankai and Philip based on the location of the camera. It was originally a residential area. There are rows of apartments on both sides of the road. Behind the apartments are single-family cottages. There are 2 schools, a police station and several clinics. Of course, there will be necessary green parks. The materials here are not rich, because this is one of the main areas controlled by the survivors. It has been searched for countless times. Basically all the things that should be found have been found. What can be left is not hidden too much. Too strict means that the value is too small to be worth the burden. The people of the Wild Dog Gang probably came out with the idea of 3 strokes with dates and no dates. It's just that they didn't expect that their every move has already fallen into the surveillance of the camera. When Ankai brought Mary to the 8th block, the general survivors here had already hid. They couldn't provoke the Dingo Gang, nor could they provoke Ankai, so the best choice is to treat it as unwatched. The 2 don't want to help. In fact, at the beginning, Ankai had a good reputation among the survivors. After all, he has a large shelter, strong firepower, and he is not a gang member, which is very important. But after Ankai sought revenge on Barry, his reputation began to change. This is also inevitable. Although everyone knows that Barry betrayed Ankai, there are always some people who think that Barry is for his grandson to survive. It is excusable. Since you have nothing to lose in Ankai, you kill Barry directly. It's a bit too much. For this kind of person, Ankai has nothing to say. No matter how good this kind of person is, his shelter is not needed. And during this period of time, there have been people who wanted to join Ankai's shelter, but they were all rejected by Ankai. He only chose the members he wanted, and he didn't want them. It's useless to come more. As a result, his relentless image gradually spread among the survivors. Those who don't know the truth will inevitably regard him as another Wild Dog Gang. If it was before he came to the 8th block, maybe someone would provide some information, but now, he can't even see anyone and everyone is hiding from him. That's good, he doesn't need intelligence at the moment. Take Mary to board an apartment building, and the 2 lie on the edge of the roof, observing the Wild Dog Gang members across the road. This time, there were a lot of people dispatched by the wild dogs. Motorcycles and bicycles were parked on the side of the road, and 4 people were in charge of guarding them. There are 4 more people scattered around, guarding against possible attacks. They didn't care about it this time, and it is almost impossible to find the site loophole of the last time. 4 other people entered the apartment opposite, and they could hear gunshots from time to time inside. They were pistols. There were at least 2 pistols. There are 8 people outside holding 6 pistols, so this group has at least 8 guns, which is not a small number. Ankai and Mary observed for a while, and finally solved the 2 people next to the motorcycle first. I'll take care of the green suit, you will take care of the black suit. Ankai gave the order and raised his rifle, and together with Mary, aimed at their respective targets. They did not rush to shoot, but waited quietly. When the eyes of 5 of the remaining 6 people were looking elsewhere, Ankai gave a low voice. Shot. Ankai and Mary shot at the same time, and the 2 shots merged into one. Two of the four wild dog gang members who were guarding the motorcycle in the distance immediately trembled, and a large burst of blood burst out of their heads, rolling to the end. This sudden change made other members of the wild dog gang stunned. Left 2, right 3. And Kai's voice is very calm, with a kind of indifference to life. Bang bang. 2 more gunshots. This time, and Kai was a bit faster than Mary, but the result was actually the same. The other 2 people next to the motorcycle were also knocked to the ground. Enemy attack. Concealment. The wild dogs around who were in charge of patrolling screamed sternly to help the crowd, and hurriedly rushed to the waste car nearby. Others also woke up like a dream, looking for hidden locations. But it is a pity that they are not professional military personnel. They are just a bunch of gangsters who do nothing on the streets. They neither know how to find the most suitable cover, nor do they know how to identify the direction of the bullet by ballistics. As a result, 4 people took refuge, and 3 of them failed to find a suitable place. One of them even hid directly to Enkai and the others. "Give it to you," Enkai said to Mary. "Good." Mary nodded and shot the idiot with her back to Own. Enkai put away his rifle, turned and went downstairs. It is definitely not good to be on the roof all the time. The members of the wild dog gang who entered the opposite building must have discovered the situation. They have plenty of hiding space in the building and can relatively calmly confirm the location of Enkai and Mary. Although they were only holding small pistols, if they were allowed to find their positions and calmly launch a counterattack, the ghost knew if there would be a stray bullet that would just hit Enkai and the others. This kind of situation is absolutely intolerable by Enkai, so after completely suppressing the wild dog outside the building, it is necessary to find a way to deal with the 4 in the building. The environment in the building is complicated, and the fighting methods are also varied according to the changes of the enemy. Enkai went all the way downstairs, carrying a pistol and walking towards the building across the street. There was another gunshot. A gangster who saw him and was about to shoot at him was shot in the head by Mary because he was showing his head. The other 2 gangsters were frightened and immediately retracted, but one of them was not lucky. It happened to be within Enkai's line of sight, and it happened that there was no hot weapon such as a pistol. Enkai raised his arm blankly. "No, please, don't." The little bastard cried and burst into tears, his crotch was stained with water. Enkai smiled at him, and just when the little bunny showed a surprised expression, he gently pulled the trigger. Being kind to the enemy is cruel to Own. "I'm sorry, but if you are to blame, you are on the wrong team." The last gangster hid behind the 3 trash cans in the distance. There was no shelter around it, and it was impossible to escape. It's a pity that the trash can block Enkai's sight, otherwise Enkai can easily kill him. But forget it, just treat it as the homework for Mary. Putting away the revolver, Enkai cut out 2 machetes. At the same time, he opened the system, turned to the Agility General Outline, found that Special Forces skill, and added his newly acquired skills. In the minds of ordinary people, Special Forces often represent omnipotence. Assault, blasting, assassination, and lurking are almost all omnipotent, especially personal combat power, as if everyone is god of war. In fact, the requirements of Special Forces in reality are definitely higher than those of ordinary troops, but they have not reached the level of god of war on land. The so-called Special Forces, in terms of arms, mainly refer to arms that perform special tasks. Of course, the Special Forces in the system is more in line with the Special Forces in the minds of the general public, which is to allow a person to develop in the direction of the almighty god of war. The effect of this skill is comprehensive ascension's melee ability, physical fitness and various skills. It can be said that this skill is equivalent to the existence of panacea, plus a little, it is a comprehensive ascension. Enkai only felt that a current ran through her body, as if there had been some changes, and as if nothing had changed. Of course, the change must have changed, but the magnitude is too small. But for people like Enkai who has almost no foundation in this area, this change is big enough. He stood in the stairwell of the building, listening carefully, and quickly locked the positions of several people. 2 on the 3rd floor, 2 on the 2nd floor, and the 2 on the 2nd floor, just beside the stairs. Enkai smiled slightly and stepped upstairs. The soles of his feet would slow down subconsciously every time they landed, and his footsteps were silent, which was impossible before. Quietly came to the stair platform between the 1st floor and the 2nd floor, took out a small mirror from the backpack, stretched out his hand for a while, and Enkai determined the positions of the two people on the second floor. Although it was one on the left and right, the one on the right was halfway out, and the pistol was aiming at the stairwell, and the one on the left was hiding behind the corner of the wall, ready to give Enkai a kill. Innocent. Enkai smiled and took out a piece of clothing from his backpack. It was the jacket he was wearing when he first came across. He kept the clothes without tearing them down, but at first it was only kept as a memorial, and there was still a thought of going back in his heart at that time. This idea is very weak nowadays. On the one hand, Enkai has been appointed, and on the other hand, there are more and more people around him. Everyone trusts him to rely on him to get together. He can't just casually abandon these people, so it's almost time to say goodbye to the past. Enkai raised his hand slightly, and abandoned his clothes from the stairwell. Bang bang bang. The gang on the right fired subconsciously. The pistol he was using only had 6 bullets in the magazine. Under tension, he blasted all 6 bullets in one breath, and then he noticed that only one was flying up, clothing. What the hell? He subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief, and then saw a dark figure leaping out following his clothes. It is Enkai. Holding a machete in each hand, he felt as if he was advancing on the stairs. He could cross 4 steps in 1 step, and rush to the second floor in 2 steps. After going up to the second floor, he immediately became short, and his feet changed rapidly like dancing. His body was like a spinning top. At the left corner of the stairs, he drew a huge arc of low body. The gang hiding behind the corner, still looking at their own companions, swept across to Enkai and wanted to shoot. But within 7 steps, the knife is faster than the gun. A blade of light flashed through like lightning, and the wild dog gang behind the corner, the entire right hand was broken from the wrist, the fracture was smooth as a mirror, and no bone stubble was visible at all. What? He opened his mouth in horror, and when the scream was about to blur out, another knife light slashed across his throat and vocal cords, and the scream that was about to be exported was abruptly chopped back. Don't talk to the dead. Enkai faintly dropped a word, and when he turned around, he pounced on the dingo gang on the opposite side. The man was still loading the magazine in a hurry, and when Enkai rushed to him, he had just installed the magazine. Go to hell. After installing the magazine, the wild dog helped the crowd to shoot quickly. But perseveringly, Enkai was too close to him, and just swayed a little before letting him pass the muzzle of the pistol. No matter how fast the bullet is, it doesn't make sense to miss someone. 3 knives. One cuts the hand tendons, one cuts the throat, and the last knife pierces the heart. This wild dog gang looks very young, he should be less than 20 years old. On the earth, he is still a young man who hasn't left the university. But in this world, he has already lost his life. Enkai watched the opponent holding the handle of the knife, and fell to the ground a little bit, until the opponent completely lost his life. He took the machete back. One of the 2 knives was added with a cutting plug-in and the other with a chopping plug-in. The power has a large degree of ascension, and the quality of the 2 knives is also very good. They are all 3-star machete, with higher durability. It's not easy to damage, and the damage is slightly more ascension than the low-star ones. There are 2 more. Enkai returned to the stairwell and continued to walk up. The 2 wild dog gang members on the 3rd floor are still fighting. The target of their battle is the zombies. The 4 people originally acted together. Because of Enkai and Mary's raid, they had to separate 2 people to the stairwell to block the enemy. With only 2 people left, although they can also defeat the zombies on the 3rd floor, the difficulty is undoubtedly higher, and it is even more dangerous. What's the situation below? They shot. I don't know, the enemy should have been killed. Who is it? Did the lizard help those bastards? It could also be the person from the shelter. I said long ago that I shouldn't come out today, you guys insisted on coming out. Nonsense, this month's mission has not been completed yet, do you want to feed the zombies? Now let's not feed the zombies. Jingle bells. As he spoke, a crisp crash sounded. The 2 looked in the direction of the sound, and saw a round iron bump rolling under their feet. Not good. Boom. The grenade exploded. The shock wave directly swept through most of the corridor. Enkai stood in the stairwell with his back against the wall, waiting for the smoke to dissipate before he stepped out. The place where the 2 wild dogs were fighting for the crowd was already in a mess. Several zombies were blown to pieces. One of the 2 was also killed. Although the other was not dead, one eye was blind and one arm. It has also disappeared. Blood is constantly flowing out under him, and it is not known whether it is his own or a companion. You devil. You will die sooner or later, the boss won't let you go. It's a pity you can't see it anymore. And Kai walked forward blankly, and when he saw a random stroke, he declared the end of this person. He did not collect the materials of the building, but put away the pistols of the 4 people. When he went downstairs, he heard a gunshot and Mary fired the last shot. When he arrived outside the building, the last wild dog gang outside had also been killed. As usual, the few pistols outside were put away. After a while, Mary drove over. The 2 put all motorcycles and bicycles on the back of the jeep, then stepped on the accelerator and drove away. Unforgivable. Never let him go. Strike out immediately, and destroy that shelter. The loss of the 12 people is certainly not big to the wild dog gang, but when they are constantly recruiting and expanding, the consequences can be imagined when they are taken such a blow. The survivors who had originally planned to join were immediately scared and chose to leave. Even those newcomers who had joined are now emotionally unstable, even affecting the original morale of the wild dog gang. No one thought that Ankai's counterattack was so violent and fierce. In addition to the previous 14 people, only the members of the wild dog gang lost in the hands of Ankai's gang. There were already as many as 26 people, almost equivalent to the lizards in the heyday. Help the number of people. The material loss is also great. This time why the wild dog gang wears multiple pistols to the members who go out, mainly to prevent Ankai's surprise attack. But they couldn't think of how fierce Ankai's combat power was. The 12 people were wiped out almost without fighting back. The materials that have been raided are gone, and the weapons are gone. That's not even counted. Even the vehicles they rode out were also taken away. The loss is too great, so big that the wild dog gang can't bear it. Degree. A counterattack must be counterattacked, but there must be a plan. The plan will never change fast. I got the latest news. The shelter has recently added several people. It is said that they have escaped from other cities. There are 5 people in total. When there were only 2 people before, we had already lost when we wanted to attack. Seriously, now they have 8 people. What if they continue to recruit people? There are a lot of military weapons in the shelter. The lethality is much higher than our pistols, and the range is much longer. If you don't take advantage of them, they haven't fully developed yet. If they are eliminated when they grow stronger, do you want to watch them get stronger and stronger? But, I think we should all be dispatched. The lizard gang is now abolished. The other survivors cannot unite without the backbone. Now is the best opportunity for us to attack the sanctuary. We must not just miss it. Seconded. Agree, we can't just admit defeat. To eliminate them all at once. More and more people agree to launch a general attack, because in their opinion, the threat of Ankai at this time is already too great. If left alone, it may become more difficult to deal with in the future. This is what none of them want to see. Under the anger of the crowd, even the 3 senior members of the Wild Dog Gang could not suppress the opinions of the group unless they wanted to be backlashed. Ever since, the plan for the whole staff to conquer Ankai and others was decided. Of course, if someone is willing to fight Ankai to the end, naturally some people don't want to encounter danger. That night, when Ankai and the other members celebrated the big harvest, when the crowd was sitting together for a bonfire dinner, a Taoist shadow suddenly appeared outside the gate of the shelter. He approached the door of the shelter, and before he raised his hand to knock on the door opened on his own initiative. Ankai appeared behind the door. Coincidentally, Ankai was about to go to the toilet at the time and just passed the monitoring room. As a result, he saw the figure outside the door at a glance, so he opened the door one step in advance. He is not worried about being attacked by the Wild Dog Gang. As long as the Wild Dog Gang dispatches more than 3 people at a time, or if there is any special place, Philip will directly inform him through the walkie-talkie. Like this situation where only one person is dispatched, Philip will not report anything. Something. Ankai held the door with one hand, and pressed the holster around his waist with the other. If the other party was malicious, he could draw his gun and shoot in 3 seconds. I'm here to make a deal, the man said in a low voice. Trade. Ankai looked at each other suspiciously. Yes, I'm a member of the Wild Dog Gang, No, no, I just joined the Wild Dog Gang, and I have quit now. They can let you quit. And Kai curled his lips. If the Wild Dog Gang is so easy to withdraw, it would be a good thing, but in fact, it is definitely not an easy thing to withdraw from the Wild Dog Gang. It can even be said that whoever wants to withdraw will not have a better end in the end. The Wild Dog Gang cannot allow the owner to shake the military spirit. I ran out by myself. It's not right. Someone helped me. Let's quit together. Let's not talk about it. I hope I can get some food and weapons. I can give you the latest information for wild dogs. The information of the Wild Dog Gang. I have to see if your information is useful. If it is useful, of course the transaction will not be a problem. And Kai said with a smile. The visitor gave Kai a few glances before sighing. The Wild Dog Gang is ready to launch an all-out attack on you. Now the Wild Dog Gang has been kidnapped by several main combat factions. The losses in the gang have been too serious recently and they can't bear it anymore. Stop, don't you have 3 leaders? It's useless. Everyone is scared now. They think that as long as you exist for one day, they may be defeated and killed in the end. The few calmer people now have no right to speak. I don't want to be with you. The wild dog helped to die, so I hope to get some food and weapons, and then leave the city. What do you think of my intelligence? The visitor looked at Kai expectantly. Kai stared at the opponent blankly, waiting for someone to sweat a little nervously before he smiled slightly. This information is good. I can give you food and weapons, and I can even give you vehicles, but I want to make it clear to you. If you get these things, there is no place for you in this city. You can go anywhere, as long as you are not in this city, otherwise if I meet you in this city in the future, you know the consequences. Kai said, he could actually kill this person right now, anyway, there is no evidence of it. But he thought for a while and didn't plan to do this. After all, the two sides didn't have any hatred. Whether this person was a new member of the Wild Dog Gang or not, as long as he was willing to leave here, what if he let him go? There is always a bottom line to be a person. As long as the other party does not violate the content of the transaction, there is no need to really kill the person. Kai asked Mary to fetch a pistol and 50 rounds of ammunition, as well as some food. Then, in the gratitude of this unknown man, he slowly closed the door. Before returning to the bonfire, he told others about the information he had just received. Carol, take the children to the warehouse and hide them. Carter, you prepare. This time, except for Carol and the children, we will all be dispatched. Kai is also ready for a full battle. He currently has thousands of bullets, and there is no shortage of big guns. He has also made a lot of explosives, which have been buried in the only way of the Wild Dog Gang. Now he is waiting for the Wild Dog Gang to dispatch. This time, he will do his best to eliminate this cancer completely. However, before he could take any action, the door was knocked again, and Kai went over to see that he was from the Lizard Gang. Did they also get the news? Kai thought so and opened the door. The one standing outside the door was not someone else, but a member of the Lizard Gang who had stopped Kai before. Something. Kai looked at each other suspiciously. I brought the replies from the leaders. We agreed to your request. We can give you 100 caddies of grain as a gift from the Alliance, but our grain is not free. You need to use guns and bullets. Change. Rest assured, our requirements are not high, as long as a rifle and 300 rounds of ammunition are enough. How about it? It's a good deal. You can get 100 caddies of food, and the friendship of our Lizard Gang. Quote. When the young man spoke with a proud expression, it seemed that Kai's greatest honor was to be able to practice with them. Kai looked at each other like a fool, and only smiled when the young man was already a little embarrassed. Sorry, I don't need to join forces with you anymore, and I don't need the friendship of the Lizard Gang anymore. Go back and tell you the leader, don't bother me anymore, otherwise the Wild Dog Gangs today will be your tomorrow. After all, without giving the other party a chance to react, Kai slammed his hand and closed the door again. The young man stood outside the door. The whole person was dumbfounded, and it took a long time to react. His face flushed instantly. You will regret this. He put down a ruthless sentence, returned to the gang headquarters as quickly as possible, and added fuel to it, repeating what Kai said. What? He really said that? Not wanting face. He is despising our Lizard Gang, and he must not be let go. Kill him, the big deal is to join forces with the Wild Dog Gang. You don't need to join forces, just wait for him to besiege him when he is out. It's decided, absolutely can't spare him, he has to pay the price for his recklessness. Everyone in the Lizard Gang criticized Enkai verbally. Of course they said so. In fact, if they were to rush to the Enkai shelter now, they would not dare. But soon, an opportunity for them to dare to dispatch came. They were dispatched. A group of people in charge of monitoring the Enkai shelter ran back, panting and reporting the latest situation. All the people in the shelter were dispatched, and only 3 children stayed. They went in the direction of the Wild Dog Gang, and they should officially start a war with the Wild Dog Gang. This news surprised everyone in Lizard Help. This is a good opportunity. Yes, if we can occupy that shelter, we can have a lot of weapons and ammunition, and we won't have to be afraid of wild dogs to help in the future. What are you waiting for? Let's go. Go together. Leave 2 people to guard here, and the others will go to occupy the shelter together. Walk around, hurry up. A group of people were very excited, including the leader of the Lizard Gang. Everyone thought this was an excellent opportunity. They quickly packed up their weapons and supplies, ready to occupy the shelter in Enkai. At the same time, the Wild Dog Gang also received news that Enkai and others were out. Should ambush them on the road. Are you sure it was not discovered by them? Definitely not, you can rest assured. Then get ready, tell those bastards with the facts that the powerful firepower is definitely not their reliance on offending the Wild Dog Gang. They should pay the price for their previous actions. The Wild Dog Gang quickly rolled out the plan. More than 90% of the entire gang quickly armed and acted in batches, making an ambush on the way Enkai and others must pass. The 2 big gangs were dispatched together, alarming the other survivors in the city. When everyone learned that Enkai was going to fight the Wild Dog Gang head-on, everyone was stunned, and when they knew that the Lizard Gang was going to take a black hand against Enkai's shelter, they were a little bit angry and annoyed. Angrily at Lizard's help not being moral, and annoyed at why he didn't get the news in advance. In short, with the dispatch of Enkai and his group, the entire river bank area suddenly became turbulent, and it seems that the zombies were preparing the battlefield for them. Anne, is it really okay for us to do this? Carter vowed to help before, but after all, he was still an ordinary person. Although he had experienced some battles, he was far less changed than Enkai. The thought of going to war with the Wild Dog Gang will be waiting for him, and Carter's legs are a little soft and his face is a little pale. Don't worry, I was prepared. Enkai said with a smile. Really, that's really great. Carter grinned reluctantly. Obviously Enkai's words could not dispel his inner worries. While speaking, he turned his head and glanced at the direction when he came, which was the direction of the shelter, and he always felt a little worried. Okay, let's go. Everyone in the Wild Dog Gang is already waiting for us, don't let them down. Enkai said, continuing to move forward. This time when they went out, they did not drive a car or ride a motorcycle. Instead, they moved forward purely on their legs. A group of 3 people, after walking a few blocks, finally came to a position not far from the Wild Dog Help. Just as they were about to enter the street, Enkai suddenly stopped. What's wrong? Carter asked quickly. It's nothing, just found some sneaky guys. It seems that the Wild Dog Gang is trying to give us a big gift, but it's a pity that they will be disappointed. Enkai took out a remote control from his arms, looked at the empty street in front of him, smiled slightly, and stretched out his hand to press the button on the remote control. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. It's broken. Carter knows Enkai's previous plans, so he is also waiting for the explosion. As a result, he waited and there was no response, and his face couldn't help turning pale. However, just before his voice had landed, a violent popping sound suddenly came from behind him. Carter turned his head and found that the location of the explosion was actually the direction they came from. Anne, this. Don't worry, it's just a gift to the Lizard Gang. Enkai turned his head and said with a smile. At this moment, the streets near the shelter have become a sea of flames. A dozen people were scattered in every corner of the street, most of them were blown to pieces, and only one person was still wailing on the ground, struggling to survive. Why, what the hell is going on? My legs, my legs. It was the leader of the Lizard Gang who screamed. At the moment of the explosion, he reacted quickly. He pushed a companion in the direction of the bomb and was not directly killed. However, his legs were gone below the knees, and an iron piece was inserted into his abdomen. The blood is flowing out desperately. Stop howling, isn't this obvious? There is an ambush among you, nothing more. An indifferent voice sounded. The howling man looked up and saw a familiar face. Philip, how are you? Why did I show up here? And early expected that you would attack the shelter, so I have been waiting for you here since last night. If you didn't move out, and originally planned to let you go, it's a pity that you have chosen your own dead end, which is no wonder we are. Philip said blankly. Let me go, please let me go. I can give you money, I can give you food and weapons. The lizard gang will be yours from now on, as long as you can. Puff. A sharp arrow pierced the person's throat directly. His eyes widened. With unwillingness and despair, he fell slowly. Lizard gang. A gang of rubbish, you are ashamed to say. Philip sneered, hung the longbow behind his back, glanced around, then turned and left. After he left, a figure came out from all corners of the street. It was the survivors around. They looked at the lizard gang being caught by the bomb, and there was a flash of terror in their eyes. No one thought that Enkai had this kind of thing in his hands. The lizard helped to use his own life to experience it steadily, and the other survivors were also given a lesson by the sight in front of them. It is estimated that after this incident, no one in the riverbank area will dare to make an idea of the Enkai shelter. This is the real purpose of Enkai choosing to directly kill the members of the lizard gang with a bomb. He just wants to use powerful force to frighten all those who have ghosts in their hearts. The sound of the explosion in the distance attracted the attention of many people, and the members of the wild dog gang hiding in the dark corners on both sides of the street were also taken aback. Just when they realized that something was wrong and prepared to escape, they saw Enkai slowly took out another remote control from his pocket. Not good. Run away. Leave here, someone yelled, but it was too late. As Enkai pressed the button, a grand fireworks event unfolded slowly in front of Enkai and others. Flames soared into the sky, flying all over the sky at any time, accompanied by various broken bodies and limbs. The explosion only lasted more than 10 seconds, but a whole street had been blown beyond recognition, and there were some wailing people down the road, but they could not arouse Enkai's discomfort and mercy. He walked across the street, constantly pulling out remote controls, and explosions continued to happen around him. For this battle, Enkai used up all the explosives he made. In order to make these explosives, he almost used up all the electrical parts in his hands. Of course, the results were great. Several blocks were blown up in a row, and the manpower deployed by the wild dog gang had a loss rate of over 90%. How did you confirm their location? Carter was so frightened, he couldn't think of it anyway, and Kai, who usually smiles with them, is actually such a terrifying and murderous character. Camera. Mary replied for Enkai. Yes, it is the cameras. I have arranged cameras and bombs on all the roads leading to the sanctuary from the wild dog gang. I originally planned to give them a surprise when the wild dog gang attacked the sanctuary, but Philip reminded me that maybe I could initiate an attack. I thought, if I take the initiative to show up, can I attract the dingo gang to enter the trap? It seems that my plan is correct. These idiots are not even defensive. And Kai said with a sneer. Carter wiped the cold sweat on his forehead, didn't know whether to laugh or cry in his heart. Shin said that it was not that wild dogs helped stupid, but that they never thought you would have so many bombs in your hand. Among other things, the number of bombs detonated in Enkai just now exceeded 100, scattered in 3 streets, and more than 30 bombs were placed on each street. This was made by him through the system. Although the materials used are simple, it has great power and can directly blow people into pieces at close range. If the distance is a little less, it will be shaken to death by the shock wave. Only if the distance is far enough can it be avoided. Got hurt. However, the receiving area is limited, and the distance from one bomb means that it is very close to another bomb. The people hiding upstairs are also unsafe. The previous explosion directly destroyed several buildings. As far as Carter saw, at least a dozen people were buried alive by the destroyed buildings, or fell from high altitude. But no matter which way it is almost a life of 9 deaths. Even if he didn't die, he was seriously injured. In today's environment, a high probability of injury is equivalent to death. So even if those people are left alone, they can't survive. The bombs installed by Ankai are more than that. They are just people on other streets without wild dog gangs. Therefore, before leaving the monitoring room, Philip has already removed the signal receivers on other routes, even if Ankai accidentally presses them. Wrong, don't worry about exploding. Including the explosion on the lizard gang, they were all cameras quietly arranged by Ankai. The wild dog gang and lizard gang did not expect the cameras, nor did they unexpectedly expect the traps like bombs. As Carter thought, no one would have imagined that Ankai would have so many bombs in his hand. If it were only one or two, it wouldn't matter at all. Only a dozen people were killed or injured, and the wild dogs helped. But when the number of bombs breaks through a certain limit, the quantitative change can trigger a qualitative change. The terrifying lethality instantly smashes the wild dog gang to death. Now there are fewer than 10 people alive in the wild dog gang, mainly the original ones. The 3 leaders, and their guards. When Ankai came near the wild dog gang, the 3 leaders of the wild dog gang were still standing on the container, staring at the still unextinguished fire in the distance. They didn't react until Ankai appeared in their sight. Shoot me and kill him. Can't let him go, kill him. Fatty and the woman are screaming. The other man looked ashamed. If you lose, you lose. What else can you say? It is no longer the problem of Ankai not dealing with them. In the past, the wild dogs were very powerful. From the beginning of its establishment, it was very cruel to the ordinary survivors in the riverside area. However, anyone who dared to enter their territory to search for supplies was killed without exception. Not only that, when members of the wild dog gang go out, they often bully the weaker survivors. Regarding these situations, several leaders of the wild dog gang have not stopped, but think it is good. After all, this can disguise the reputation of the Ascension wild dog gang. So in the group of survivors, the wild dog gang has been grieving for a long time, and now the wild dog gang is instantly broken bones. Even if Ankai and the others do not do anything, waiting for the wild dog gang, it must be the survivors' crazy revenge. Let's go, it's not safe to stay here anymore, the man said. Ignoring the surprised eyes of the 2 companions, he turned around and wanted to leave. Ankai didn't stop him, but looked at the other person turning around with a sneer. After turning around, the man stopped. Because it was right in the distance in front of him, on the container that was supposed to be guarded by somebody, there were already a few more figures at some point. Although Ankai would hardly accept survivors into the shelter, he did not make the relationship too stiff. In fact, as long as he did not die, even if he kept rejecting the survivors would not turn his face against him. 2 reasons. The first is multiple friends and multiple paths, which can be understood by an adult. Secondly, Ankai has proved himself with strength. No one wants to offend such a strong man. Even if he is rejected, he is only disappointed. Life can still go on. It is nothing but the inability to enjoy the various facilities and materials in the shelter. But if you really turn your face with Ankai, now the fate of the wild dog gang and the lizard gang is the best example. Because they didn't completely turn their faces, the 2 sides still communicated. Just before Ankai was going to face the wild dog gang, he had already notified the survivors who had had a big feud with the wild dog gang. There may be many people who do not believe that Ankai can defeat the wild dog gang, but there is no loss if they come here to wait and see if the wild dog gang really loses. Now if it becomes a reality, these people who had enemies with the wild dog gang took the initiative to stand up. What are you going to do? The woman screamed again. Ankai really didn't understand how such a person became the leader of the wild dog gang. At that time, the fatty, with a gloomy face, holding a spray in his hand, as if he was going to die together. You cheap bones, come and kill me. If I die, I won't let you go. Killing one is enough. Killing 2 daddy will earn you money. Come here, come and die. Fatty yelled. At this time, a person walked out across the street. Ankai knew each other, named Orson, who was a more famous person among the survivors. The combat effectiveness is average, and there are no special skills, just a good character, a recognized good old person, and more prestige among the survivors. We will no longer hold other people accountable today. As long as you throw away your weapons and leave, we will guarantee your safety. He said this to the 3-person guard. The so-called guards are confidants. There are 5 people in total. These 5 people were the core circle of the Wild Dog Gang before, and now the Wild Dog Gang is about to be destroyed, and they have no previous support. Everyone, look at me and I will look at you. All 5 of them took a step back. You. Fatty's eyes widened, but couldn't say a word. Because at the moment he turned around, one of the guys who had just taken a step back suddenly took a step forward, and the dagger that he did not know when he drew it directly into Fatty's chest. I have endured you for a long time, I snapped. Before this person finished speaking, a flower of blood burst into his head. It's Ankai. Didn't you understand what people say? Throw away the weapon and leave by yourself to ensure your safety. Both Orson and I can testify and do extra things, and the end will be funeral. At this moment, the remaining 4 people did not dare to say anything, obediently discarded their weapons. Pay attention to throw it away, not put it under your feet. If you put it under your feet, it might be used by the remaining 2 of the Wild Dog Gang and thrown under the container wall. It is impossible for them to use it, and neither Ankai nor Orson will give them this opportunity. After the 4 people left, there were only 2 living people on the container. Fatty is still not breathless, but judging from the appearance of the convulsions, it is estimated that it is almost the same. The woman was completely slumped to the ground, she couldn't say a word, only the last man stood there calmly. If I want to redeem my own life, can you give me this opportunity? I know a warehouse where the most valuable things of the Wild Dog help are stored. Only I know that place. Let me go and give me enough food and drinking water and a means of transportation, I will tell you the location of the warehouse. The man said in time. It seems that it is not his general who is at the end of the road. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe.